Hello everyone and welcome to the Hearthstone Masters Tour Summer Championship. I'm Raven and joining me to kick off today's show is going to be Sottle, of course. Sol, welcome. How's it going? It's been a while since we've had a big standard tournament, but it's that time once again. How are you feeling?
It's been a while. I'm really looking forward to it. It has to be, when Masters Tours like this are kind of more sparse, it feels surreal that this is only like the second Masters Tour event of the year that we're doing at this point. But if anything, it does kind of get me hyped. It makes them special, right? If they're rare, then that does increase the excitement that comes around when one does appear, at least for me a little bit. So I'm really looking forward to sinking my teeth into some competitive Hearthstone because I haven't been able to do it for quite some time.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about, whether that's the players or the new meta we have found ourselves in. But first, let's just go over the overall structure of what's going to be going on this weekend. Of course, this is, as you mentioned, the second Masters Tour of the year, all leading up to that World Championship. We are going to have 3 champions by the end of the year. Of course, we're in a Masters Tour Summer right now. We are going to have Fall as well. And there's been, already a lot on the line for these players when all of these, the grinding that takes place to be able to even to make it to a tournament like this, Sottle.
Yeah, it's a very arduous program this year. Incredible hard work to even get to these points for the players that have made it this far. We have a lot of repeat competitors that we did see from the spring version of this tournament as well. I believe it's 10 returning players and 6 new ones. So we can see that some of these players that we're seeing, some of the repeat names, have been putting in the work month after month after month for top legend finishes. Very top legend finishes. We're talking like top 5 being the prize that you're looking for in terms of a legend finish at the end of the month to make it to this point, all with the eventual goal of making it to that World Championship and being able to call yourself Hearthstone World Champion at the end of the year, which is an incredibly exclusive club.
Yeah, in spring we saw Levick claim the champion title and book a spot at the World Championship guaranteed with that qualifier, and now we're going to see who else is going to join him by the end of the weekend. I'm super excited. We're going to check out the format of this tournament as well. And some of you who've been watching pretty much any Hearthstone for the past weeks will probably recognize it form of conquest. So we'll do that in just a second. But overall, Sottle, what have you think of these players? We will check out the groups in a little bit. Any specific names that are really sticking out to you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have a lot of returning players. We do have a lot of first-time players coming to this tournament for the first time who weren't featured in spring. I think out of those players in particular, the one that's going to grab the most headlines is Gaby, right? Gaby has really been one of the players that's held that mantle of best player in the world for a significant period of time. And now we get to see Gaby sort of re-entering a field like this and kind of putting himself to the test against some of this new breed of players that are really fighting it out for that top player status. So I'm really excited to see Gaby re-enter the field. But honestly, those 6 names that we're seeing, like Insane, DreadEye, Gaby, we've kind of, and Renman as well, we've actually seen a decent amount from in the past. But there's like brand new names like Rulian, for example, that we've just never really seen, or certainly for myself in competitive Hearthstone. And suddenly to be rubbing shoulders with some of the elite that we see here in this tournament, like that's a huge step that a player like that will have to make.
Yeah, and that's the thing to think about, I think, over the course of this weekend as we see these players play out the group stage today, at least, is that, yes, there are a lot of names that people who've been following Hearthstone will know instantly, the likes of Gaby and so on. But there are these newer names, or just less common names, let's say. Well, they did exactly the same. They had the same, basically, barrier to get here as everyone else. So we can check out what the groups look like so far. And it's one of those tournaments, Sol, I'm going to say it like I always do, incredibly stacked. I struggle to even say which is the, quotes, hardest group and easiest group, because it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes, they are all stacked groups, unless you're Gaby, who put out a tweet saying that essentially Group A through C has 4 free players in them, and Group D has 3 free players and Gaby in it. That's the way that Gaby has broken down these groups so far. But yeah, people have kind of been pointing out Group D as that potential group of death. McBanterFace, Gaby, who is our opening round matchup, Rekvam and Hemlock as well. That is 4 fantastic high caliber players. But honestly, it's such a tough argument to have, because 4 high caliber players is what you end up with in every group when the qualifying period to even get to this point is as tough as it is at this point.
Yeah, it's incredibly tough to get here, and we will be going through, as many matches as we can, of course, through this group stage. But as you mentioned, Subtle, we will be starting with that Gaby versus McBanterFace. So we get to talk about lineups in a minute, but even just touching on the meta, Subtle, which we've not talked about, it's a meta, at least from what I've been seeing, everyone seems to be enjoying in terms of like the sort of player base / pro player base on a whole.
Yeah, I think overall it's been a very well-received expansion overall from both a casual perspective. Now we're getting to see what it looks like from a competitive perspective, but I think looking at the lineups that have come into this, even looking at the lineups between these two players, we're looking at, it seems, like a mage mirror in our opening game between Gaby and Banter, but that's two different mages, and we're seeing that kind of throughout the tournament of different classes being featured in people's lineups and different individual decks being brought within those particular classes. As we see here from Gaby, the lineup he has gone for is with the Naga Sith Mage, a Drum Druid, Hound Hunter, and the Nature OTK Shaman, but you can see some of this resume that Gaby has put together. I think the most interesting part of that little player card for Gaby was that he says he enjoys the game more the better he is at it, which I think is a very competitive mindset to have, right?
Yeah.
Where your enjoyment of a game is derived purely from beating other people.
Yeah, whereas my enjoyment from games has to not be that case because I'm not good at any game, so I have to find joy somewhere. Take a look at this list, though. It's a bit of a, I want to say the word retro, Subtle, in the fact that we've seen the bones of this archetype in the past, but it's got a few new sort of slants on it now with some of the new cards.
It does, yeah. Going with the Sif package and having a few tools in there for just the Sif OTK with the Flame Geezers being able to represent burn damage, but going with the Spitelash Siren package overall, it is a very 50-50 mishmash deck where sometimes you can feel like you have a hand with the best part, with the half of two different decks that don't necessarily interact with each other. The one thing Gaby's done there, which I do kind of like, is squeezed an Arcane Intellect back in there as well, because when I was playing the deck, it did occasionally feel a tiny bit light on card draw. But we will move on to McBanterFace here as well, who you can see is putting together a pretty solid resume for himself as well. He is going with the Arcane Hunter. He's going with Rainbow Mage instead, like the pure spell school focused version of Mage. As I said, even though it looks like we're going to be kicking things off with a Mage class mirror, it is two different decks going up against each other. And then has the Miracle Rogue as well, which I think historically is one of Banter's all-time favorite decks, so no great surprise to see him going with that.
Yeah, and just to get it out there now, so we don't have to repeat ourselves, the top line on those player profiles, you can ignore a little bit and read it. This is a Masters Tour appearance if you want. But let's dive into a deck I'm a huge fan of. I love this at the moment. Maybe not this exact build, we can talk about that a little bit later once we get into it, but I think this is such a cool archetype for Hunter, and I'm really glad that I've been actually getting involved in it.
Yeah, really interesting take on kind of the aggro hunter archetype now. Like, we are seeing two different hunters in the current metagame. One more aggressive, which is this version, which is focused on arcane spell damage, early minions, mid-game pressure, annoyance and disruption with secrets, which then curves through into late-game burst damage, either through your buffed-up arcane spells, or just large weapon damage from two of the key cards that you see highlighted there, the Starstrung Bow or the Titan. In comparison, again, it's kind of a similar theme throughout this matchup. Gaby on the other side is playing a slightly slower version of Hunter, the 40-card version, the Hound Hunter as it is known as, with more of the big beast synergy going on. So again, it kind of speaks to the factor of this expansion, which has gone down well with a lot of people. It's just the range of decks that at least feel somewhat viable for people to play, right? For multiple classes to have multiple archetypes that are tournament viable to the point where some of the best players in the world are pinning their flag to that deck to be brought to a tournament, I think is a good sign for the integrity of an expansion overall.
Yeah, and I think even just not these decks, but as we talk more about Titans, I think the Titans themselves are going to be very interesting to keep an eye on, because I do think they've hit that sort of perfect line of being extremely powerful, but not just game breaking, right? A lot of the Titans, you play them, you get great value. Obviously, I am going to talk about the Hunter one. The Hunter one, like, always feels good to play. You can always make active choices with it, and it can get you, value one way or another. But it's not like you see your opponent play a Titan, oh, I've lost the game, it's all over. There is ways to fight back, and the game keeps very, very sort of even though the Titans themselves are strong. But for me, I think this is one of the expansions that the flavor has really come through. The Titans feel impactful pretty much across the board, and even just some of the legendaries themselves and the newer cards, it feels very thematic, but also not thematic in the sense that it can be too focused on that and less focused on like cards feeling good or powerful. I think it hits that line really well.
Yeah, and I think bringing that back around full circle to Gaby versus Banter that we're going to be looking at, I think no Titan embodies what you were talking about better than Norgannon, which is a card which some people think is not even good enough to be played in the build of Rainbow Mage that people are running at the moment. Others disagree. Some people think it's core to the deck, and you're stupid if you cut it. Yeah, Banter is playing it in his version of the deck. Some people insist that it doesn't do anything because you play it down for the first time. Generally, your first ability is enemy cards cost one more, and then it just gets cleared anyway, and it's ended up doing nothing for the entire game. Other people are just like, no, you play it, they can't clear it because their cards cost too much mana, and then you play the card Reverberations in your deck, so it just immediately deletes your opponent the next turn. So there is certainly a lot of discrepancy in terms of power level, but I think that's great. The fact that we're still having these arguments about how good Titans are and whether they fit in X deck or Y deck is much rather where I'd like cards from an expansion to land, right? As opposed to, hey, we printed this brand new expansion-defining mechanic, and it's so good that it just goes in every single deck you see for the entire expansion, right? Like, I think this is a really, really nice place for the game to have landed.
Yeah, and apart from the decks we've looked at and talked about, at the moment, is there anything else that has sort of stuck out to you? I know, for example, you've sort of favoured Demon Hunter quite a lot over the past, what's a year or so, let's say, of expansions. Like, has Demon Hunter felt good? Is Rogue looking good right now? Is there any of your favourites that say aren't, Mage? I'm not going to talk about Hunter because I know it won't be Hunter, but that aren't Mage right now. Anything really stuck out for you?
I can't go much further in the broadcast without mentioning Shaman, really, can I? Nature Shaman has been a deck that I've enjoyed enormously throughout this expansion. Put a little bit of work into taking the deck that PocketTrain was playing and then refining it a little bit. Tweeted a list which PocketTrain then adopted and said, yeah, the changes sort of make sense. It's slightly better than what I was doing. And now 10 players in this tournament have brought that deck. So, I'm pretty happy with that. I think I've done a good thing there. Well done. If Sottle Shaman carries someone to the World Championships, I will be expecting a personal thank you.
Yeah, and maybe some copyright discussions if that becomes the official name of the deck as well.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Just get it in there. But yeah, I think the Shaman deck has been one of the most interesting because even I personally don't play tons of Shaman. Obviously, been playing it for this, but I feel like it's a deck that everyone talks about the big crazy OTK burn factor, but also. The deck just rocks a good curve. Like, you just play a lot of stuff, and I think that is sort of the underlying power. I think if the deck only had the capabilities to do one or the other, it would be nowhere near as popular and as strong as it currently feels.
I completely agree with you, Raven. For once, your analysis of the situation is spot on. I think so. The direction that Pocket pushed it in and the direction that I then pushed it further in is just have as many cards in the deck as possible that are good to just play on curve and play for tempo and just spend 2 mana on turn 2, 3 mana on turn 3 or whatever. When I started talking about, this is the list, this is what you should be playing, I got a lot of pushback from people saying, no, it's the totem version. Like, turn 5, you just play 1 mana, it summons 4 totems, you swing your weapon, it summons another totem, you've just got 5 minions in play for 1 mana, you can play Bioluminescence, you just OTK people for 40 damage on turn 5. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but I also won that game, but I won that game on turn 8. It doesn't matter that you did it on turn 5. The difference is that in the games where you don't draw the absolute nuts, your opponent plays a minion and suddenly you're Druid and totally incapable of killing anything in the deck whatsoever. So I do think for a little while people got way too distracted by the ability to deal 60 damage on turn 6 or whatever. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, yes, you'll save a little bit of time, but if you're going to kill your opponent on turn 6 with 60 damage, there's a pretty good chance you're going to kill them on turn 8 with 40 damage, right? And how do those two wins enter the books? Exactly the same. They both count as a win.
Yeah, live coach somewhere is smiling right now. And just speaking, because you just mentioned the class, we have a sprinkling of druids in this tournament. We are getting into game 1 now, so very briefly, Saul, do you think Druid's going to do well?
I actually spoke to PocketTrain about Druid a little bit, and his opinion of Druid is a lot higher than mine. Normally we align pretty well on these things, so it kind of took me by surprise. Pocket said the Druid was really, really close to just being like the deck for the tournament for him, which surprised me because I don't have it on that level at all. But we'll see how things develop. Apologies, we do appear to have missed Mulligan and a couple of the early turns here. Doesn't seem like Banter's been able to get the weapon down early, though, which I think is the biggest deal for him. Does not look like Gaby is currently rocking a Spitelash Siren in hand either, which is the biggest deal for him. So, in terms of missing an early game, which you never really want to do, it does look like large periods of this has been fairly inconsequential.
Yeah, and what do you think with this matchup specifically, with a lot of more minion-focused for Gaby, or at least a board-focused approach? I'm not saying McBanterFace doesn't have impact on minions, but how important are these alibis going to be? Now, I fear for myself when I speak about alibi, because it's a card that a few people are not best friends with, but are these sort of key to Banter's strategy to surviving against these potentially big Naga board waves?
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, right? It's one of the advantages that Sith Mage, like the pure Rainbow Sith Mage, does have because they just naturally get to play Alibi in the deck, so when two players are kind of racing to combo the other, that can be a big factor. But I think perhaps more of a key card will be the creations in Banter's deck, because what Naga Mage does, which I think is generally underrated, is it just makes big boards out of nowhere, and it can do that a couple of times very quickly if you draw Siren very quickly. So being able to get a creation up to 4 or 5 damage AoE to be able to take down a board like that when it comes down might just end up being key, which is why you see here, for example, I think just 0 mana Fell Spell being taken, right? Not because it's going to have a significant impact on the game, but because it's cheap, it's mana efficient, it can juice the spell schools. And really start to power up some of the cards. Because if you are at a baseline unfamiliar with what this deck is, it has various payoff cards, Elemental Inspiration, Sith, Wisdom of Norgannon, which start as weak cards but suddenly become extremely strong cards the more different spell schools you play throughout the game.
And it's got the double whammy, and something I feel like a lot of matchups boil down to is just don't let your opponent stick stuff, right? It's very similar in a lot of these matchups, because I do feel like the game right now is roughly split into very, very minion-focused decks and very, very spell-focused decks. And a lot of the time, if you're the one that's focusing on the spells, you need to clear those boards, because the likes of like the Mech Rogue, even this deck, like Hound Hunter potentially as well, does kick out just a lot of potentially aggressive minions. And you might have your fancy combos later on, but if they aren't dealt with, then it doesn't really. If the minions aren't dealt with early, it doesn't really matter what you can do in late game if that late game never happens. But Gaby is going to still just be piling on enough minion pressure to make McBanter, at least think about how to deal with these, and not necessarily just free play cards like the Norgannon, for example, may not be the best choice now to just play into already 7 power on board.
Yeah, it's a tough turn for sure, because...
Is he going to kill with it?
Possibly. You could also just, play a secret. You can still, the value of just playing it as Lothar, I think is underrated anyway, right? Just be vaguely disruptive for your opponent. I do kind of like this, is what I was going to lead into, because I think you have to work backwards from next turn here. you really want to just jam Elemental Inspiration on 7 where possible, right? Because you've juiced it very heavily. You can see in hand the Wisdom of Norganon costs 0, therefore the Elemental Inspiration is going to be very, very powerful. So I would imagine, really just love to jam this card on curve. So I think being as annoying as possible, just causing your opponent to have a slow turn via the method of throwing out Norganon does make the most sense here overall, I think.
And double Wind Fury as well. Like, something's going to have to be done, but here's a Siren, and everything's about to kick off.
Seafloor Gateway is a crucial card in both versions of these decks. The amalgams that you play in your deck are mechs. For example, in Gaby's version, he does have the creations as well, which are mechs. And in McBanter's version of the deck, if you discover that through any method, it is just a free tutor for your creation, your big AoE card. So it's a very underrated card. Do not forget that you have mechs in your deck when you discover that card. It's very easy to do.
And it rhymes, so it's easy to remember as well. Maybe the Alibi just going down, not really for the protection, but more just to keep the chain going.
And this now is the moment where you can spot the Naga Mage player. Anyone can do this up until this point. When the rope appears, that's when you separate the real Naga Mage players from the casuals. I'm very much on the casual side of this. I panic when the rope appears when I'm playing Naga Mage.
I panic before the rope appears when I'm playing Naga Mage, because I still don't know what to do. Here, though, the Frozen Touch being in hand, although a little bit expensive right at this second, is a good start as well, because that is a card that is for a long time now sort of become one of the go-to damage spells for a lot of different mages, where it's just so much damage over time as long as you can weave it in. So Gaby does have that to be able to push, but has to sustain this, and this Alibi actually will help out versus these Wind Furies to stop any true shenanigans happening this turn.
Will. Interesting sequencing from Banter, choosing to test the counterspell with the 0 mana draw 2 in hand. Ends up losing them, really valuing these alibis first and foremost, which, definitely agree with that, valuing the alibis first and foremost, but also valuing presumably Infinitize and Volume Up. There are other factors there. You could plan your turn out saying, okay, well, if I play 0 mana draw 2 and it's not counterspell, I still get to do everything I want to do this turn because I've only spent 0 mana at the start of the turn, right? Whereas potentially if you try and waste one of the other cards instead and it goes off, that might end up ruining your turn.
It's also pretty interesting as well. I was even looking at the Drown there, honestly, just to get rid of the Siren and make these trades a little bit cleaner. But one thing I found with like this version of the Mage is, even if you, I'll say, throw away some cards, whether it's a counterspell or not, like, you can generate so much stuff or draw so much stuff that even if you just throw some cards out to the void, you're still going to be in a position like this, where McBanterFace still has pretty much a full hand to mess around with.
Right. And I think, honestly, the concerns of Gaby's Sirens on the other side is somewhat minimal to Banter at this point, because he played the finale'd Volume Up and he hit Solid Alibi, so he knows he now has 3 more Solid Alibis from this point. He knows the Solid Alibi that Gaby played previously is not something that Gaby's going to have an easy time playing more of, because this isn't a natural Solid Alibi deck that Banter is playing against. So in terms of just racing to the OTK, I think Banter will feel like he has enough ice block effects to get him over the line, no matter what Gaby does on the other side with the Sirens.
Yeah, because the alibis have come early enough, right? Like, McBanter's already over 30 health, so it's not like, oh, well, hang on, if Gaby sticks 7 minions, and, you know, over the course of a few alibis, it's still pushing some level of damage, but with over 30, it's very, very safe for the foreseeable future.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you had infinite time and you start the turn with a Spitelash Siren on the board and you then reverb that Spitelash Siren and you have 2 infused Frozen Touches and a Savara in your hand, you might actually be able to OTK your opponent through a Solid Alibi at that point. It might be possible, but that would be an incredibly niche scenario.
I'm just looking at this as well. There was the Solar Eclipse picked up for McBanterFace earlier on instead of the Drown. Is there any specific thing that he's looking for out of this Solar?
Honestly, I think the most specific thing about it that made it get chosen is it cost 2 instead of 4.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
And It juices Sif, it juices any creations that are remaining, etc. It's just easier to throw out there on any given turn at some point, right? Which I think is probably the biggest motivating factor.
We're going to see reverb on the A8. And another one. Now surely, Sol, it's Fire Sale.
Well, Molten Rune is looking pretty lethal in the near future. 2-mana Molten Rune is very spicy. Because next turn you can just play an Alibi, you can forge the rune, and then at that point you are one mana damage spell from your deck away from just killing your opponent. So.
And there's not too much that Gaby can really do about this either. Again, there's tons of value for both players, but when one has kind of ice blocks turn after turn after turn, it gets a little bit difficult. Shadow Step picked up there for Gaby.
Oh, imagine. Remember I was talking about like OTKs with 2 Sirens and a Savara and a bunch of Frozen Touches? You then step the Savara again and get the Frozen Touches back in there? Oh, let's go.
Well, I was even thinking like stepping the Zola.
What if game 1, Gaby does just OTK through a solid Alibi?
Yeah. Be more like liquid Alibi.
More like gaseous Alibi, am I right?
Gaby's going for it. And it's done.
Oh, 1. Close. Okay.
Yeah. Can be another inspirations here for McBanterFace. But again, it's a... Without something to support it, it's like an odd card to play just into a full board of minions, right? So, like, I guess it's still fine like this, an Alibi, draw a card, but it's like even going way back to the actual Ice Block days. If you are doing these Ice Block style plays but not really progressing the game plan, then it feels like you're just sort of skipping a turn for both players to an extent, right? And that's even less, or I guess more the case with the Alibi not actually blocking the damage, so...
Right.
It's a bit of a tricky one. Like, is this good enough? Maybe it has to be good enough for McBanterFace, but it doesn't feel great to just play loads of minions. Maybe there's Rush, but then solid Alibi and pass, go again, and the outcome is drawing 1 card.
Okay, does go for it.
Yep.
This does involve not forging the Molten Rune, which is the primary concern, I would imagine, because, obviously you asked the question about the Solar Eclipse before the Molten Rune appeared. Obviously, Solar Molten Rune, adds the Molten Rune costing 2 alongside the Sif is going to be incredibly powerful. You could just set up for that as a potential win next turn if you wanted to go for, but Banter choosing to be as annoying as possible, occupy the board as well.
There's that immolation actually in Gaby's hand that I did not notice till now, because as you can already imagine for viewers at home, it's pretty tricky to keep track of all of the cards in this kind of mirror-ish match when there's so many generations going on. But yeah, definitely going to help soften up these elementals. I think the interesting thing here as well, because I'm just thinking about what this matchup looks like on average, and if McBanterFace did not hit that many alibis, right, like, you can see the danger that Gaby could present in this matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I'm not sure how many resources got expended through turns 1 to 3, because we did unfortunately miss that, but you could also argue, like, Banter is well within his rights to just have an Arcane Bolt or a Flame Geyser in his hand now, right? And then the game would just kind of be over in the other direction. So you could argue this is kind of a low roll in terms of burst damage from his position as well.
Oh, could choose to mill Gaby's last card here. Swap it for the Colossal.
Banter nods. Ah, yes, explosive runes. Just as I expected.
I think McBanter now is just going through the hand, as you have to do with a deck like this, and be like, right, if I play this turn, what does my burst look like next turn? Okay, if that's not going to work, what does my burst look like the turn after? And so on, until he can make it happen. Obviously, Gaby only on 25, and 25 is a low number when we talk about decks like this Mage, when we talk about Shaman as well, the really high burst decks, that 25 is by no means safe. You know
So
what we need,
Banter
Sol?
kind of all in at this point.
Yeah.
Does go with
We
the
need
last
a-
alibi, does forge the rune. So we'll be
We
looking
need
for
a
the kill
Sif
next
check,
turn.
don't we?
I believe it will be on 7 spell damage, if I've kept track.
Okay, my guess was going to be 6, but there we go. I'll trust you.
Sorry, once the solar eclipse is played, it will be on 7 spell damage, I believe.
Gaby's doing his best to get through the, or as much damage through the alibi as possible, but I think until these run out, and because the board it hasn't had the ability, right, to just push 7 with a full board or so, like push like at least some level of damage, McBanterFace has got to be feeling at least fairly confident here.
Yeah, I think at this point, Gaby's just fishing for another generated solid alibi so that he can potentially play a turn next turn against Banter without an alibi up, which I think the way BanterFace has played this, so the Elemental Inspiration turn on the previous turn, right, I think what that was about is to try and bait any solid alibi out of his opponent's hand on a turn that didn't really matter, right? Like, that was essentially just a free turn.
Yeah. Oh, Cold Case picked up. So, I'm guessing by McBanter's reaction...
What's going on? Am I stupid? Doesn't Solar Eclipse Molten Rune just win the game here? Am I not understanding how that interaction works?
Well, the way McBanterFace looked was that they looked like they wanted to draw something specific and whiffed with the Cold Case, which sure, if it is after burn specifically, but I was with you for a minute where I didn't think burn was needed, but now I feel like I'm wrong.
Interesting.
Gaby's just... the smirk and the shake of the head. It's what kicking this matchup with this crazy Mage Mirror is going to do to you. So that's +7.
Okay.
Oh, is it because the second one's random?
Is the second one random, though? I'm not sure it is.
Well, I don't... I didn't think so, but that's the only thing I can think that... Yeah, I didn't think it was random, but that was the only thing I could think of that would make McBanterFace pause, right? Because, oh, there's 2 minions, there's no spare mana to kill those minions with. Is there a world where the first one obviously hits face whatever, and then the second one can just hit the minion and just ruin it? But I'm not 100% sure, because I've never been in that position, if I'm going to be completely honest, but it was the only thing I could think of that McBanterFace paused on, because that, as you were building up to for a few turns, the numbers weren't the difficult bit, right? Just adding that number that many times equal lethal? Yes. So that was the only thing I could think of. But either way, McBanterFace is going to take the lead in this matchup. And those alibis really causing Gaby trouble. And again, we did miss the first few turns, so we do apologise. But it didn't look like Gaby was off to a very rapid start, which the deck is capable of, the Naga Mage, to get off to a bit of a quicker start than that.
Yeah, the Siren turn came a little bit late. I think if you Siren on 4 with the coin or on 5, like if you're able to go Siren, 1-mana Naga, like either Nagaling or Slither Spear, and then able to pop off from there to the point where you're at least making like a 5 or 6 minion board. Because you've got a 5 health Siren... that deals 5 AoE is kind of tricky at that point, making a straight up clear on the other side unlikely, so I'd imagine that becomes a kind of a tough game for the Mage to win at that point, because they have to start blowing alibis pretty early. But yeah, interesting late game to say the least. I don't know whether we got a bit lost, whether Banter got a little bit lost, but to me it started to make sense with that extra turn of the Elemental Inspiration that came down alongside the Alibi. Yeah, that makes sense because you can kind of buy a free turn to say to Gaby, okay, if you've generated a second Alibi from somewhere, you're going to have to play it now because you don't know that I don't have lethal next turn, right? Like, you fully have to respect my ability to lethal you the next turn. So I'm getting an Alibi out of your hand this turn, and then I can forge the rune, and then with the Alibi gone, I can potentially try and kill you the turn afterwards. But yeah, the final turn did not perhaps play out with the smooth confidence that I was expecting it to, so who knows?
Yeah, and I think in this meta especially, because there are a few decks that play like this, right, that have bursty abilities, not necessarily huge OTKs, but 10, 15 damage out of nowhere. There are decks that exist that have that, right? And I think once I'm going to make up an average here, but after turn 6, you do have to sit there and start thinking, my opponent could just kill me next turn, so what can I do to stop that? Or at least do your best to say, well, if they don't kill me next turn, obviously that chance increases by, turn by turn. So then what kind of pressure can you put on? What can you do to stop them doing it against some of these matchups? So, yeah, we will be seeing more Mage as we go out through over the course of this weekend. So there'll be plenty more where that came from, no doubt. But of course, that was just game 1. And we know Conquest is not over till it's over. So Gaby will at some point have to play that Mage once again if he wants to get the victory. But overall, what do we have left here? Because I believe it's McBanter's Rogue is banned out.
Yep.
So that means there is the Hunter and the Shaman left over. And before we get too much into any specific matchups, because we don't know what they're going to queue yet, did you have any inkling of where bans? I know this is a very generalized question, but was there anything too big, like something you would expect to be banned the most this weekend?
I don't think there's like a meta terror that absolutely has to be banned under all circumstances. Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a strategy ban for this tournament. Like, I think some people will have Druid, and I think other people in the tournament are trying to counter Druid, for example. So in that sort of situation, you might be looking at a ban that creates your best chance for your Druid to pick up a win throughout the tournament, throughout that series at some point, right? Because that's the crux of that individual series. I think it's much more of a kind of a flex ban situation. Players will be coming in with the idea of like, okay, if I see Nature Shaman, I'm going to ban Nature Shaman. If I see Aggro Hunter, I'm going to ban Aggro Hunter. But they will have like a tier list, right? There's no hard and fast, this deck goes 100% of the time. I think players will have to react more to a lineup holistically and pick a ban on the fly in this meta.
Yeah, and sorry for the noises I just made, but whilst I was 100% listening to what you were saying, I'm also watching this Hunter draw because it's popping off. Although the secret was not great, just a 1/5 out of it, there are definitely better cards to get out of that. This hand overall is looking quite powerful.
Hey, it's a 1/5 with charge, though, and it survives Explosive Trap.
True.
The nuts.
Hey, no, this is a great setup. This is exactly what you want with this deck. This is pretty much my favorite deck of the expansion so far. Who would have thought? And it gives you so many flex options, especially in this matchup. It's one where you aren't completely lost because there are AoE options, Star Power being one of them, which are really good for clearing up those boards full of minions. So we'll see how McBanterFace navigates this, but I imagine pretty soon. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, going for the 2-3 on curve. I would have expected to see the trinket trackers come out to just start drawing those cards.
Yeah, you also had the potential option to just try and really disrupt your opponent's 4 with coin turn, right? Which is the earliest time a Spitelash Siren can go off, just by going with Forge traps and just play 2 more traps on that turn to really just shut everything down that your opponent can do.
I was even thinking I was even wondering, was this an answer or a setup because Star Power was drawn? Was this if Gaby goes Spitelash Coin, then there's the beefed up Star Power? Because the 1 spell damage on Star Power is actually very significant.
It's so big, yeah.
Yes, it is like, just clear the board, basically. It just doesn't matter what's on the board.
It's 2, right? Because it got buffed in deck on the previous turn as well, and then buffed in hand.
Yes, sorry, of course. Yeah, so it's 7, which is massive. 7. Yeah. So maybe that's why, because normally I'm very greedy with the 2-3s, right? To just buff as many cards in hand as possible. But it did ensure that no matter what Gaby did, McBanter could almost certainly just Star Power the board away.
Take
Motion
6,
oh,
idiot.
I love it
There we
so
go.
much. Look at the aggression.
Spell. Naga. Haven't kept track of what's in the Savara. Explosive Trap, Vast Wisdom, and something? I was
Alibi.
discovering magic from this turn. Okay, I thought you played another spell before this turn.
Didn't he play Alibi?
Apparently not.
Oh, I must have. Did he do something before? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going crazy.
Discovery of magic must have come before the alibi.
Oh, right, okay. There was an alibi, right? I know we saw a lot of
there
alibis
absolutely
last
was an
game.
alibi, yes.
Yeah. Is this what's the weekend going to turn into? It's like, all I see is alibi. Wherever I go, I see that card. I mean, I've seen Gaby put out a ton of pressure, but this is the problem, right? One, Gaby's just pretty much dead anyway, so now does have to get that alibi, which was very useful. But also, just this star power just kind of laughs at this board.
Yeah, did have the emergency button of the Volcanomancy in hand. It's a 3-mana Volcanomancy, but, you know, no big deal, right? Because pretty much infinite mana the way that turn was going.
Right.
But you don't generally want to play your entire Siren turn and then panic at the end of it and go, damn, I haven't managed to clear the board. I guess I'll play this Volcanomancy. Like, that's not really a good thing that you want to end up
Fingers
doing.
crossed.
Yeah, exactly.
See, now I think this is the difference between McBanterFace and myself. He's probably working out, optimal trades for star power. I would have just ripped it.
Yeah, he's just counting, like, what's the worst case scenario, right? Like, if the 7 hits the 4-1 and then the 6 hits the 1-1 and blah, blah, like, what's the worst case scenario if I just literally rip it right now?
The reason why I'd just rip it is because you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 attack minions, right? So, like, I feel like you could almost always make the trades up after the fact, but I think McBanterFace is just making sure everything's clean. I'm not going to go for them instead. Going to go for the portal. Was this really better? I feel like the board just got a lot weaker
It did.
to save a star power. Maybe this is just, okay, I'll do it this turn, and then if it goes again, star power that turn.
Right. It's where matchup knowledge really comes into it, and I will confess I have not played a great deal of Naga Sith Mage this season. Played a good
That's
chunk
my
of-
issue. I'll tell you about a lot of matchups with this Hunter, but not this one.
Right. But I imagine, seeing the alibi come down on the other side, if there was no alibi come down, right, then suddenly star power the whole board, go face with everything makes sense, right? Because you don't waste a bunch of damage trading into minions. Because the alibi was there, maybe Banter's just setting the stall out for a longer game and saying, okay, star power, double spell damage buffed star power is just incredibly good at clearing a board if it comes down in the future. I think also if you told Banter that his next draw was Speaker Stomper, he would have protected that giant board that he had on the previous turn. So he could just protect it further with Speaker Stomper on this turn, but can't necessarily play to the 1 out off the top of your deck.
And a bit of tech I do like. I believe it's just a one-of in McBanter's list, and it's a card that is one of those you can just drop it in to wherever you want, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the student. Okay, that's just funny. What is that now? Is it a 7/5?
Not a clue.
Yeah, I think it's a 7/5.
How does it work, he says, as he Googles?
It dies and it goes into the deck
Death
and then
rattle.
+2/+2,
Shuffle a
I
copy
think.
of this. Permanent +3/+3.
Oh, it's 3.
So it would be a 7/6 after dying.
Yes.
once.
Yeah.
Okay. Presses hero power. Okay, that's done. Now on with the rest
that
of my
always
turn.
happens. Yeah, this is one of those weird ones where he hasn't drawn a lot of the card draw, so he's not sitting on a lot of this burn. There's the ricochet shot, there's the arcane shot, but a lot of times this deep into a game, you're normally rocking a fair few burn spells that could maybe have even just won. Also, no weapons. Whether it's Agramar or the Starstrung Bow, which is really unfortunate because again, these weapons like carry this deck and they put out so much damage. Now Banter's
Now,
a little bit worried.
Do you
look at
remember,
Banter's
Raven,
face.
in the days of lore, the legend of Gaby would have killed him?
Yeah. Well, here we go.
It's time to see if the legends were true, and there's not a Relic DH in sight.
Yeah, it's so rough seeing this from Banter's point of view, where like the mana just keeps going, and you're like, when's it gonna end?
There's a Sith.
Yeah. Oh, and so much mana still. What's that? Seafloor? Okay.
Yeah, that draws a 1-mana Naga now.
Oh, and worst case is the clear.
No, it drew creation. Yeah. Oh, we're not thinking about clearing, Raven. We're OTK.
No, I said
turn.
worst case.
Yeah.
Someone's got to think about the worst case scenario, okay?
Won't somebody think of the minions?
It's like that zombie film. That person. Who
Oh,
thinks
that really
the worst case
narrows it
scenario.
down for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
World War Z. That's it.
Okay.
It's that person whose job it was to think of, well, what if this crazy thing happens? I need to be able to fix it.
I'm gonna say dead. Gaby's animations are significantly ahead of mine, but yeah, Bolt, and now just the light show. Just the light show that's come out of hand recently will be able to do it. There you go. Gaby always kills them. There is never any doubt. Gaby always kills them.
And this is the thing, right? And it's something I think Lorinda mentioned yesterday when we were talking about the decks the players have brought and everything, and, you know, just lineups and what the meta's like. And I think Lorinda said, like, I can't wait for, you know, one of the players who brought Naga Mage to just destroy win the tournament, and then the following week on ladder when mere humans are trying to play Naga Mage, and you know those wins will not happen because you have to be extremely confident. You have to. The decisions aren't even thought about. I feel like it's just straight pattern recognition.
Yeah.
That's probably the best phrase I can put to it. Of like, this card appears, it's either a yes or no, that decision's already made, next. And then all those decisions are almost like just autopilot pattern recognition. And then Gaby just won that game, which I think not a lot of people would have thought possible. But we knew better.
I think playing OTKs at that higher speed, D6 Warlock, something that Gaby was fantastic at doing, Naga Mage when you start with so many cards left in your deck, I've kind of related this in my head as like being really, really good at a rhythm game. Like if you're incredibly good at Guitar Hero, right? And there's just a million notes flooding down the fretboard towards you, and you're just like hammering away, full comboing the whole guitar solo, absolutely no problem, right? And then people are looking at you going, how are you reacting to all of that? Like, I'm not. It's just pattern recognition in my head, right?
Exactly.
Like, I've done it a million times before. I sort of see a vague shape of notes coming in front of me, and I just know what it is. I've been here before. It's that kind of thing of just you do something enough times, it just becomes ingrained in muscle memory. But what is very, very impactful are the early game decisions, like Gaby's early Discover choices, Rip to Vast Wisdom early for a swapped Volcanomancy and Solid Alibi. Both of those cards coming in incredibly clutch then in sequential turns, just dropping the Solid Alibi, essentially just focusing as a Time Warp, just to skip one turn, and then the following turn, that Volcanomancy being able to clear the board that was left over from Banter on the following turns. And essentially what Gaby's done there is worked backwards from the, like, okay, on 7 I can play Siren and Reverb, and then we go, and then the world is my oyster from that point.
Right.
So I just need to map out my turns to get me to that point and discover choices that get me to that point. And he did that very, very well indeed.
We're going to go into game number 3, all even on this first series of the day and of the weekend, of course. I see Druid on the top there for Gaby, and McBanterFace jumping over to the Shaman. So this is a bit of a tricky one, I feel, because I feel like most of the time Shaman has AoE or good enough answers unless the Druid really pops off, you know, like has that dream setup of just everything going, the double choose ones going off and creating a mega board. But Shaman's definitely got the ability to clear waves of Druid tokens, which is again what Druid, it's like a wave, right? Always comes back in this style of Druid. So we'll see if Gaby's got any tricks up his sleeve.
It's like a wave, but unfortunately, said wave is primordial and full of piranhas. I like this matchup a lot from the Shaman side because you kind of have triple win condition in this matchup, which feels great. Like, some games you just play a Novice Zapper on 1, and then you play a Flow Rider on 2, and then that discovers Feral Spirits, and you play Feral Spirits on 3, and those minions just hit the Druid in the face every turn until the end of the game, and they die.
Yeah,
right?
and your opponent's playing like 1/1s and 2/2s, right?
Yeah, like that can happen. Oh, I mean, sometimes they have this hand and they're playing nothing, right? Like,
There's also sometimes they are also just a Druid.
yeah, like, let's not forget, yes, this deck plays some early game tokens, but not a lot, not enough to consistently be able to swarm the board. And then secondary, obviously, you have what people understand to be the primary win condition of the deck, which is just OTKs on a very early turn. That's very possible as well. Thirdly, you can kind of win the game sometimes by just letting them do their thing, right? Like, they just make their board of 6/8s or whatever, and you go, cool. Like, I've AoE'd
breezes away.
It's
Yeah.
gone. And then they're not necessarily be able to reload from that point if they haven't had a very resource-heavy draw. So I'm a big fan of this matchup from the Shaman side, even though I believe the stats say that it's a little bit closer than I'm making out. And again, I will caveat, other very good players have much higher opinions of Druid in this meta than I do. So there you go. Hooray, a 2/2. We did it.
Stuff. Yeah, there is Topia available for Gaby, so if you can get there, it will help out with those sort of, maybe even there's enough waves that get through. But the problem is just the health, right? Like, it's like, yes, let's say Druid can make infinite waves of pressure. So yeah, at some point, McBanter's probably just going to blow you up, so that's going to be the big problem here. I do just like Feral Spirit on curve, though.
Yep,
I'm a big fan of just playing stuff.
Just talking about Banter's list, Banter is not going with pure Subtle Shaman. He has gone down to a single copy of Overdraft and is playing 2 copies of Carving Chisel instead. Carving Chisel, not a card that I find to be particularly effective. Again, it's one of those cards where if you draw it on 2 and then you get to play Flash of Lightning on 5, for example, and you already have Lightning Reflexes in your hand, then you can OTK people on 6 with that kind of draw, but that's not, to me personally, something that I value as hugely important with the deck. But Banter and Gamer RVG, who have been known to prep together in the past, so may have done so again for this tournament, are playing that version where they've snuck in a second Chisel at the expense of second Overdraft, which I will say, if I were to lose a card from my list, second Overdraft would be the first card on my list that I'd cut.
And what Saul really means is inferior deck in every way. Gaby, now this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? It's like, well, yes, the Druid, this form of Druid doesn't have to pop off super early, but when it's already getting beaten up on board now, and there's other stuff for Shaman to do, as you mentioned, sort of the triple win condition. This is where you feel yourself in a little bit of trouble, right? Because it's like, well, I've got to clear this board so my board sticks. When can I even do that? And I was mentioning earlier, Shaman, one of the primary decks of saying, well, if you get to turn 7 and you're against a Shaman, you might well just die at any given moment.
I think furthermore, because something that I didn't necessarily address at the time, Banter kept the Titan in this matchup, which I think is largely with the idea in mind that kind of the games pan out like this fairly often, right? You curve out, you land a board, and if you are ahead on board throughout the early turns and you just jam the Titan on curve, Druid's not killing that. Ever.
It's not equipped, is it?
Yeah. No. There is a command of Neptulon that has appeared in Gaby's hand, which might have something to say about that, but under normal circumstances, it's not a minion that dies when you play it on curve. So that allows you, especially if you have that stick on 6, like if you play the Titan on 6 and then play Flash of Lightning with your free spell for that turn, and then the Titan sticks for the next turn as well, they're dead. Just forget it. There's like no hand that you have at that point that doesn't kill your opponent.
And so do you think that this Overdraft is just going to be played kind of no matter what this turn then? Because I do agree with McBanterFace's first play there, where the Ancestral Knowledge just was too good not to press this turn, but then suddenly the Overload going into next turn, as you mentioned, Banterface is already ahead on board, it's going to end this turn ahead on board. It would be absurd, right, not to set up the Titan for turn 6?
It does look like the most positive line here, yeah. Banter seems to agree. Gets the 1 mana back just to be able to drop a totem on board. Totems somewhat threatening still in this matchup. It's one of the things about the Chisel, right, where the Chisel represents what a lot of like fake pressure, I would say, overall, where people get scared of the fact that you have 3 or 4 totems on your board, as if you're going to OTK them on turn 4 or something without any discounts, which isn't really going to happen. But the threat of extra bodies on board is always scary in spots like this. Great play by Gaby, by the way. Gaby, without seeing Banter's hand, knows exactly what's going on here. And now, if Banter just plays a Titan on curve, Gaby has already set up to deal with that situation in a very advantageous way for him. So it's one thing for us to sit here and go, okay, this is what Banter's plan is, and then Banter does that plan. It's another thing entirely for Gaby, his opponent, who can't see his hand, to also understand what Banter's plan is and play around it.
And it's such a good setup, because there's not really... Like, the Titans have 3 options, and none of them really solve this problem. I guess it's... Could play it and just kill the 5/5, right?
You can, yeah.
Like, that is the best option if McBanter wants the Titan to live. But no, just going to go value.
Draw 3, and then how many cards do we have in hand right now? 9? Okay. Annoying.
Does have the ability to kill this off, though, right now. With the 3/3.
With Turn the Tides, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Could full clear.
So
yeah, actually, that's really good, right? Actually, yeah.
I think that was good. That was a really good pickup. Because that's best of both worlds now, right? The Titan's gone down, and it's as not likely to die as it can possibly be. Oh.
Oh, Banter just says face damage.
Oh.
Okay. Counting on the following turn, perhaps? No discounts currently, but does have Zapper, 2 lightning reflexes, no crashes in hand currently, but okay, sure.
Was this just an assumption that because the minion is exactly Topia that, well, it's probably going to die anyway next turn, so I'll just push the damage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. It does make a lot of sense, actually, when you break it down, right? Because now suddenly you've kept an extra 3/3 on the board that your opponent has to attack into, right? Like, that's an extra minion that they have to clear, or else you're threatening bioluminescence on the following turn.
Yeah, and push 3, right? So, and as you well know from our testing, I also like to just ignore the board and push face with damage when you play the deck like this. And this is what I was talking about, where now, at this point, even if the Titan goes down and the board's clear, Gaby will not feel safe. Not necessarily, anyway.
Ooh, Crash of Thunder pickup. Okay, there's the Flash of Lightning. So it's definitely lethal next turn. But how do we feel about lethal outs this turn? I don't think there are any.
I think with the Flash pickup, it's just not worth it, is it? Just do stuff. I say do stuff. Probably not Lightning Storm.
It's fine. The one overload is not going to impact your ability to kill from 19 with double reflexes in hand, I don't think.
Yeah, my only worry is, do you want to overload when your opponent has some random stuff in hand, right? Like, that's the... And he also knows the Astalor's there, right?
Yep.
So I guess that's just the one thing to think about is, does McBanterFace want maximum mana? Because these 2 minions are he's never dead, right? Like, these 2 minions are never going to kill him.
Well,
so I'm just wondering if he wants, like, maximum.
I think because you saw all of the discounted hand get dumped on the previous turn, I agree with you. But Solar Eclipse plus things can do some disgusting stuff when you are leaving minions up on board if you have a heavily discounted hand. But no, alright, I'm down.
My hand is too full.
Yeah, so now Gaby can gain that extra armor from Astalor, or maybe go for something else here. I'm just going to Abyss a Wave, okay.
Yeah,
so
I
the
think
hand
Gaby...
make it a little bit more awkward, okay.
Yeah, I think Gaby understands the assignment here, right? Like, Gaby's dead unless Banter needs to draw something next turn, right? If Banter's set up to draw something next turn to win the game, then maybe that stops it from happening. discover first.
It actually did burn something good as well. So.
Yeah, I don't think it matters though. I think Banter just has the hand
Yeah.
comfortably. He's counting damage right now as to whether he actually ever needs extra minions from something like Command of Neptulon, but I think you're better off just rebuying here with Zap.
Yeah, I was gonna say Zap's the autopilot pick if you are unsure.
Turn the Tides, I think that's less consequential. Feral Spirits as well can now go Feral, Bolt, Crash, and then whatever the additional discover is. Yep, that's fine.
Bolt, done.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think these 5/4s were necessary because for the mana you spent on these 5/4s, you could have just played the Novice Zapper instead, which is the same amount of spell damage, for example, and you could just had a 0 mana cycle on the Zap. But it doesn't matter. Like the way to kill people with this deck doesn't matter. Pick a way that works and then execute it. Right? That's really the way to look at it.
Yeah, simply deal the damage in a bit of a nothing game there, and I don't even mean that in a negative way. But Gaby, outside of threatening the Titan, threatening a board with Topia, we saw kind of what we described at the beginning of the match and how we feel the matchup goes. Right? Is McBanterFace got on board early, like the Shaman is kind of built to do, and there was just answers for anything that was needed, right? Like, even McBanterFace could have gone other ways with the Titan, whether it's the AoE or the strictly, deal the damage to a single big minion. And it's just one of those things where, so the Shaman is just so flexible in that kind of matchup that it's very, very hard to beat when Gaby on the Druid was a little bit more of a one-dimensional plan with just, having a board focus and trying to buff those. But if you're just not allowed to stick anything, what's Gaby supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Banter was in control of the tempo of that game from turn 1, essentially. And tempo means a lot of things to a lot of people, but, the way I like to view it is who's asking the questions and who's being forced to provide the answers. And Banter was the only person asking questions in that entire game, right? It was, here's some minions, can you kill them or are you going to take 11 damage from them? Oh, you chose to take 11 damage from them option. Okay. Here's my Titan. Can you deal with this and generate a board that's so scary that I can't just set up to OTK you the next turn? Mm-hmm. Oh, you couldn't? Unlucky, you died. Like that's essentially the way that game went over the course of a number of turns, is that Banter was just fully in control throughout. And again, it's the way the deck is put together to do that, to be annoying to your opponent throughout the early turns by playing essentially just an aggro tempo board based deck throughout the early turns, and then just, oh hey, surprise, even if you didn't manage to take any chip damage and get control and actually regain control of the game around turn 8 or so, I now still have the ability to fall back on an OTK. So very, very nicely played from Banter.
Yeah, and I think the first display of many that we'll see from Shaman across the board. I think we're going to see a theme over the course of the weekend of Shaman really just showing how adaptable that deck is to what you actually need to achieve in any given matchup. But we are going to go dive straight into game number 4. The Druid once again for Gaby, going up into what I would say is a slightly better matchup here with the Hunter as the last deck that McBanterFace needs to take a win with. But I do say slightly better because even though the Shaman is probably king of just being able to do what we just saw, this Hunter is also capable of not only putting on early game pressure with the likes of Tremors, but also do some AoE clear, do some removal at least to keep any sort of early pressure from Gaby down. But Awakened Tremors is not a bad start against especially exactly Druid.
And Gaby kind of having to get ahead of this, dumping the coin to get a Treant in play so he doesn't just end up straight up taking 8 from these 4 ones that are going to come down this turn. Ooh, okay.
I love Titan Forge traps so much that I forge it on turn 2 even when I know I shouldn't. Because I'm like, but I get 2 secrets now. I just love it so much. I'm forge. Oh, I could have played something on curve to pressure my opponent. Nah, I'll get those 2 traps later on though.
Forge is a very Raven mechanic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I could just play sensibly, but if I do this, it does more, and more is better.
Yeah, everyone loves more stuff. Okay, and especially, and to be fair, when you have the Starstrung bow in hand staring at you as well, it is more attractive, right? It is achieving a lot more as well. Oh, there is.
Okay.
much. You know you want to.
You ever realize how broken your brain is? That when someone says the word forge, it just sounds like a Twitch emote and not a real word to you?
Gaby has to do something pretty strong now. Does have good options. Can have some plays on board. And of course, McBanterFace had a arguably slow turn. But that's the difficult thing to handle with Titan Forged is, yes, the Hunter has some sort of whiffed mana, so to speak, but double secrets is such a pain with the secret package that exists right now. The Hunter can basically, it feels like they can basically just pick which two they want for whatever situation or matchup they're in, and that's why it's so strong.
Yep. I love Hunter Secrets. I think Hunter Secrets are the best secrets and have been so consistently. Not best as in strongest necessarily, but the most feeling like your opponent is playing a trick on you when they get played, right?
Yep,
Which is how secrets are sort of supposed to feel in my head.
Yeah. There are some great combos you can do with this as well, because the addition of zombies and then some of the other options like zombies and then bait and switch can get so silly, right? It was your opponent's turn, yet you've cleared some of their board and you've gained minions, but on your opponent's turn, it's like, right, seems good. Cat trick, of course, a fan favorite, I think, for Hunter enjoyers of yore, I guess.
Yeah, purely just because of that golden art, though, which is fantastic, of course.
Yeah.
Also a big fan of the Wandering Monster bait and switch combination.
Yes.
Unlucky, you are proccing this no matter what you do.
Yeah. And if you're face tanking, oof, get ready.
Oh, you died. Unlucky.
Yeah. I've done that many times. Embrace nature. Gaby gonna get some work done himself, but already the havoc starts to ensue with a cat trick hidden. And it's something I do think a lot when I'm playing Hunter on ladder. I sit there and think, wow, my opponent must be annoyed. Because they did a whole turn and my board improved.
I'm afraid the one who's going to be annoyed this game is named McBanterFace, because the card draw into the drum circle and then double discount to make it cost 5 with both abilities combined on the next turn. Yeah, good night.
It's actually one reason, I don't know if you caught it, but one of the reasons why when I was sort of prepping for this tournament, I initially wasn't playing a Krakenbane list, and one of the other cards I was playing was the... Oh no.
Oh no!
My brain's just gone blank. The 1-mana spell that makes sure the spell's insta-kill, do poison.
Sure, yeah, something spores, right? Something like
but that gives you options with
game.
Ricochet. But yes, Banter does not have that card. Therefore, there are 0 options. And even if there were, it would have been still quite difficult. Would have needed spores and then Ricochet to even have a chance there. But still,
sure.
Gaby just like that fights back, and already it's match 1 Sol, and we're going down to game 5.
Spines, in fact. Urchin Spines is the name of the card.
I don't know why I blanked, because like I said, up until 2 days ago, I was playing a list with that a lot. But still, I think this series already is giving us such a good display of the meta, right? You could almost watch this series and be like, and then go to ladder and be like, yep, saw that deck, saw that deck, because it's giving us a good idea of what's pretty much going on ladder that these players have been using to qualify for this tournament. So we are going to be going to game 5. Both players evened up, and it means it's going to be Hunter once again for McBanterFace, and I've gone blank. What's Gaby got left?
Gaby has won with the
Shaman.
Druid and the Mage, so it's the Shaman remaining for Gaby on the other side. So, interesting one for sure. I think the aggro Hunter... I don't know how I feel about this, because when I was playing Shaman, felt like the Hound Hunter matchup was very, very easy, and that was reflected in the stats that I was getting, and then talking to other players, they're like, no, Hunter's kind of annoying, they can be awkward, they can do things to really mess with you.
By Hunter, do you mean Hollow Hound?
Yeah, not so much. It's the combination of Because they're playing 40 cards, they're often playing Speaker Stomper in there as well, right? So they have the ability for fast starts that can win board early and pressure you. They have secrets that can be disruptive. And then if you are forced to go all in, which sometimes you are, right? Sometimes against an aggro deck with Shaman, you play an early flash for tempo, and then you just play your lightning reflexes and you end with a Crash of Thunder on turn 4 or whatever. And that's never going to be lethal, but it can swing the board and then you get in front and you might have dealt 12, 18 damage, something like that in the process, right? And then maybe you can get there with chip damage. That's when Hollow Hound really comes in as a factor in situations like that when you've been forced through early.
Yeah.
But my perception early was that Shaman did very well against the mid-rangey hunter, and then when the more aggressive hunters were appearing, I was having a more difficult time. But as I've dipped back into Shaman specifically in preparation for this tournament, my personal experience has now been the exact opposite of that. So I don't necessarily know where I fall on this one.
I was going to say, the way I'm viewing this as a hunter enjoyer right now of playing, I've ran into this matchup a lot, as you can imagine. I feel like, however much I kind of hate to say this, is that the both decks basically are trying to do the same thing. It's just that the Shaman does it all a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can get on board with that. Certainly, if you draw schooling, then it starts to get significantly more difficult. Even
straight off the bat, McBanterFace going second, I think, is... There's some great uses for the coin with this deck, but against Shaman, you want to just get cooking, right? You want to get those minions down straight away and give Gaby as few opportunities as possible to start winning on board, because I think this will rely on McBanterFace getting ahead on board, relying on these secrets, on the Awakening Tremors as well. But like you said, with the Piranhas, it's not what you want to see if you're a Hunter Enjoyer right now.
Yeah, having drawn Speaker Stomper, though, if Banter can go win board into Speaker Stomper and just push a ton of damage, that's probably the biggest win condition from here. I do like this play of coining out the 3-4. Like, yes, getting the ability played nice and early is, of course, core, but I think also just coining the 3-4. Generally, this deck, the Shaman, wants to spend 3 mana on turn 3 very consistently. They want to play Feral Spirits on turn 3, they want to play Turn the Tides on turn 3, they want to play Ancestral Knowledge plus Flow Rider on turn 3, right? Like, some combination of cards that actually just plays for tempo or progresses their game plan in some way. So by putting a minion in play that would survive all that and kind of forcing Gaby to do something a little bit different, I think Banter has just managed to be slightly annoying on Gaby's turn, which is a big upside.
Was that drawn off the top? Did that get
sure
played
was.
so fast we didn't see it in hand? Yeah, I was going to say, what a draw. But now the big question for me is, like, again, be prepared. This is going to be me all weekend. But, like, is this just a secret turn? I know the Speaker Stomper's there, but, like, I feel like the Stomper should be used to back up a board, right?
No,
and without a board, great, your opponent has to deal with the Stomper. Oh no. But is he going to forge, or is he going to play the secrets out of hand?
That's the question, right? I don't think you necessarily need to go for the Titan Forged right now, because I think Cat Trick Hidden Meaning would be a pretty premium combination of secrets that you would take in this position anyway, right? So I see no reason not to just jam them.
Yeah, I think if you talked about specific combos of secrets, there are better options if you could cherry pick, but because you can't, it's not worth it.
This will unlock and float a mana at the end of the turn because of the way Thorim works, so Gaby can choose to play around Hidden Meaning here if he would like to.
Or just play the 2-1, honestly. Like, that's an option. Because the secret's played from hand. I think he knows it's hidden, right? Which sounds like a stupid sentence. He knows it's hidden,
He knows
but you know what I mean. He knows which secret it is. Here we go. We're going to see if McBanterFace is thinking about Titan or not. Oof, this is tricky, isn't it? Because bait and switch feels good. Oh, okay, sorry, yeah, I didn't know he had the 1 mana left for the Yormungr. Okay.
Yeah.
Bait and switch is good.
Gaby going to go face, look for the explosive trap first and foremost, does find the explosive trap.
And now just
And
lands
now-
a clean Titan, I imagine. Yep. Just deal 3 heal.
Yeah, deal and heal looks like the way to go. Ancestral Knowledge to draw the cards.
Yeah, good ordering from Gaby, nice and clean.
Yep.
Again, he had, I believe that was 100 full knowledge, right? There's only the pair of secrets, like natural secrets in the deck.
Of the 2 that were played from hand, yes, there's only 2
Yes.
copies.
Yep.
2 different secrets in Banter's deck, so yeah, knew what they were.
But there's star power. What a card.
Indeed. The full clear coming out is nice, but Banter, I think, really wanted to just have some tempo that turn, right? Like, he wanted Cat Trick to go off and not be able to be cleared. He wanted Hidden Meaning to go off, so he got another minion at the start of the turn. And then he wanted to go face with all of those minions and slam Speaker Stomper. That's what he wanted to do, because that's the way that's the route to winning the game. He is going to be able to do that here, maybe, a turn further down the line, especially as he's just seen the trigger from Gaby, the Flash of Lightning come out.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem here is it's slipping away. This is the stage where you're in as Hunter, where you just know it's slipping away.
Yep.
Right? Because although McBanterFace had some good early pressure, there's been not a lot of card draw. There's no weapons. There's no big. Okay, there's a weapon now. Good job. There's none of the big spell damage buffs. You know, all that stuff's missing, which means this 30 or 28 health is quite the way away.
I know exactly what's happening here because I have also done exactly this while on camera playing a tournament. Gaby right now is saying there is a single copy of this card in your deck. You absolutely do not have it in your hand right now. Yeah, they always have it actually.
Yeah.
It's there, mate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't know what to tell you.
At least it's a one-of. I mean, it's as good a turn as McBanterFace is going to get, isn't it? Get that bow out, start doing some damage.
That's the question, right? Is like, does Banter want to ricochet shot hero power and Stomper here, or does he want to go with the weapon, which leaves some of the board up on the other side? I think
Oh yeah,
that
I'd
is
go
a
weapon 100%.
pretty tight call overall, but I'm kind of leaning towards agreement with you.
The problem is, you're not playing the long game versus Shaman, right? Like, this is the window. Play the Stomper, cause this problem. Yep, there you go, Gaby. Nice one, mate. And then pile in the damage, because this weapon is 12 damage over 2 turns. That's a big deal.
Yep. Okay, Zapper is a very nice draw. In terms of... So the premium draws to draw on a turn like this, firstly, Flash of Lightning, right? Like, you just play it again this turn, so you're ready to go again next turn with the OTK setup. That's the best case scenario. Novice Zapper, though, is about as efficient as extra spell damage gets in the deck, right? 1 mana for +2 spell damage once you land Bioluminescence on it. So it's very high potential that he might still be able to get things done next turn. Does use a Lightning Reflexes to find some answers here, which is going to make life a little bit more difficult for him on the following turn. But the extra good news as well is that having the Carving Chisel here this is one of the situations where I will admit Carving Chisel is a very, very good card. When you have been disrupted and you're still trying to achieve lethal, right? Like lethal without discounts, having 0 mana summon a minion from a pre-equipped weapon is very, very effective at being able to do that.
Any freebies are huge. Okay, this draw's going to be big for McBanterFace because he must know. Oh, see, Sol, this is going to be something I'm going to talk about over the weekend. Not a fan of Krakenbane in the deck. Putting it out there. Feels clunky a lot of the time. Can do it this time, but he does get Mr. Hero Power, right?
Yeah, it doesn't quite work out. It's very close.
And let's be honest, though, McBanterFace doesn't really have a choice, right? I think this is just play it all. I guess you can hold 1 ricochet shot because the first one's confirmed. Wait a minute. Oh, gotta do the Krakenbane this turn. Okay.
Yeah, I mean you need to triple spell to juice the thing, right? So.
Yeah, I just thought I don't know what draw stops you doing Krakenbane next turn, but I guess it's the 3/3 on board is a benefit. Oh no, go in hero power.
Okay, has Gaby pre-counted this is the question. Can attack a 0 attack minion, which
Hey.
is very nice. Well, joke's on you. Thought he could attack a 0 attack minion to get the minion down and play.
I
So he
love
now
that
has
secret.
1 mana on Zapper, 3 mana on Bioluminescence.
Oh yeah,
And then
he's
he can
pointing
just
at face,
rip
all
the
it's over.
crashes. Yep, looks good to me.
Yeah, it looks like Gaby is going to be the winner of the first series on stream today, the Summer Masters Tour Championship here. What a matchup though, sort of like, what a way to kick off the day and kick off the tournament. We got a good spread of decks, we had some close matchups, we had some overpowering matchups, and we've seen a high number of burst damage potential coming out of these decks, and something I think we're going to see over the course of this weekend. But congratulations to Gaby, moving on into the winners bracket of the group. But of course, this does mean that McBanterFace is by no means out of the tournament. We are playing double elimination groups, so McBanterFace is still going to be knocking around, but he will have to now win the other matches he has left today to be able to move on to tomorrow.
And a lot of people will look at that, like that, just that last game, for example, right, and say, oh, it was an OTK, you know, it was just a combo deck, they just hoarded cards and comboed and ended the game, right? But turns 1 through 7, both decks were fighting for the board incredibly aggressively on every single turn, right? And that's why I really like this Shaman deck, because it's a deck that ends with a really fun, interesting, cool combo for the person doing it to execute. I understand that the people on the receiving end of it are not having such a good time. But in order to get there, you have to compete for board, right? Because if at any point Gaby had got too greedy and ignored what was going on the board, or not sequenced his turn incredibly well to be able to summon the cat trick, clear the cat trick, summon the wandering monster, summon the hidden meaning, deal with that as well, right? If that board had been able to get out of control on Banter's side, suddenly Banter has 3 or 4 minions in play and then plays the Speaker Stomper, right? And then suddenly we have an entirely different game of Hearthstone.
Wasn't Gaby on 3 health at the end of that game?
Exactly.
Like, that's nothing, right?
So that fight from turn 1 to turn 5 to turn 6 or so as to who is going to dominate the board early is much, much more crucial in these Shaman matchups than people give it credit for. And I think Gaby did an excellent job in that last game being able to get there, as well as navigating through the turn under Speaker Stomper conditions extremely well on the penultimate turn of the game as well.
Yeah, this was just our first match kicking off the tournament this weekend. There's plenty more coming up, but we're going to go to a quick break while we set up more Hearthstone for you guys, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Masters Tour Summer Championship. We are underway here with our first day in the group stage. I will be your host for game number 2. I'm Dawn, or Dragon Rider, and joined today by Lorinda. How you doing?
I'm doing great. What a way to kick it off with Gaby and McBanterFace there in that first one. I don't know how we're going to top that all weekend, to be honest, but here we are. Game 2 of the weekend, saying we can't top it. We always find a way. And we're going to have another good one for you coming up soon. We're going to have Tansoku versus Insane, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, as Raven and Sottle mentioned, there are tons of very, very good players in this entire bracket. So let's take a look at these players that we have here in our group stages. And for this Group A, we do see Wiku and Meaty moving into that winners. So they won their first match. There will be some elimination matches as well. It's going to be 2 wins to get through these groups to get to day 2. So going to be a tough battle for some of these players, but I don't know how you're feeling about this one. I feel like it's been a pretty close series so far for Group A.
Yeah, Meaty was nearly reverse swept there. He was 2-0, got back to 2-2, but ended up going through. Group B here, it's just name after name. Renman versus Casey in the elimination. We are trying to show you an elimination match here. We're not going to show every single match, so we're going to show you matches where people get removed, so you get to see nearly everybody at least once. Some of the O2s will miss, but we'll see most players at least once during the course of today, and obviously all of the top 8 tomorrow. But these groups, look at this, PocketTrain, DreadEye just cruising through there, and Nagon and Rulion, whose name I probably didn't get it right, but yeah, into that elimination match. It's just name after name. Like you said, they're all good names, but some of the names are just a little bit bigger than the others, especially in this group, Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Group C and Group D looking very, very stacked. And here we saw Gaby beating McBanterFace in that very close series in that first game. So moving into that winners, but we are going to be seeing plenty more action, including our next game that you and I will be covering here, Lorinda. And that is going to be, as you mentioned, Tansoku versus Insane. Which, what do we have for their decks, Lorinda? I know you and I were talking a little bit about this before we got into this call.
Yeah, so Insane has got the fairly aggressive lineup, actually. But everybody in the tournament's got a mage of some sort. Mainly going to be the Sith mage. Some are going to be bringing that Naga mage. Insane has got the Outcast DH. He's got the Shaman. And he has the Arcane, Secret, Face, whatever you want to call it. The weird Hunter deck that, if you played it, it doesn't feel weird, but where does your damage come from? You do 12 damage with your weapon and 18 damage from space. I don't know where it comes from.
From somewhere, yes.
Tansoku, on the other hand, has the Warlock. He has the Rogue, the Druid, and the Mage, a little bit off the wall. And yeah, look at these stats. 2016 has the golden card back more than 5 times, apparently.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. The Tansoku is one of the 2 players from Japan. Apparently, Tansoku also means short-legged person in Japanese, which, I don't know, I didn't think the Dawn or Dragon Rider meant that, but I think I fit in there as well. Very short legs. But both of the Japanese players actually both brought the same lineup, or very, very similar. They both brought the same style of decks, and that does include that Warlock that we are seeing here. I know, Lorinda, that you are not a fan of this Warlock. How do you feel seeing this here?
I mean, I'm not allowed to say the words that this invokes in me on broadcast, but this deck is incredibly powerful when it does its incredible powerful thing, which is play a slime on turn 4 or turn 5, and then get a thing, which then gets you another thing, which then gets you loads of things, and you thing them to death. Or you do nothing, you clear the board 3 turns in a row, and then you die horribly. With not a lot in between, to be honest. How do you see it? Give us a more realistic view about it.
Yeah, it has a lot of stat potential, a lot of repetitive boards that can be difficult for other decks to deal with, but it does feel like it can be a little bit high-rolly sometimes, as you mentioned, trying to really get into that slime. But we do have some other decks on the other side, and as you mentioned, fairly aggressive potentially here. So let's look at Insane and talk about his lineup here, bringing Outcast DH, Rainbow Mage, Nature Shaman, and that Secret or Arcane Hunter. A little bit more aggressive, a little bit more bursty potential. I am personally a huge fan of the Outcast Demon Hunter and this, how it's kind of well positioned to me in this meta for this tournament.
Yeah, if you're willing to just not have certain things in your opponent's lineup, like Mage, which everyone's brought, the Outcast is just pretty beaty. There's not a lot to say about this deck. If you've played this deck once or twice, you'll realize it's surprisingly fiddly and complicated to play optimally. But also, sometimes it doesn't matter if you play optimally. You just put some things on the board and hit them, and they die, and then you draw some more cards, and they die again. And then you drop Helveria, and everyone has Rush and gets really, really big, and they will die again. Like, you can kill people so many different ways with this deck so quickly, but being precise with it is actually quite hard.
Yeah, there is definitely some combinations or different play styles that you can do with the deck. I feel like there is the kind of just go for the Outcast stuff, maybe go a little bit wide on board, try to find some answers from generating those Outcast cards, or there is that building into the kind of wide board that has a lot of rush minions and getting a lot of burst damage with the Helveria damage, as you mentioned. But it is kind of interesting to me. I think it is pretty well positioned. I feel like it does well into Mage. So yeah, with all of the players bringing Mage, it seems it seems pretty solid here, and it can be pretty aggressive, go decently fast, which into things like that Warlock that we saw might prove pretty useful.
It's going to be interesting all the way through this tournament. Sottle made the point when I was practicing the other day, when I was streaming, I think, and he made the point in stream, that we don't really have good data for this particular tournament from replay sites, because there's only like 30 or 40 players in the world capable of playing these decks really well in these matchups right now. There's so many matchups, there's so many decks that you can play now, even all the way down to, it will give Warrior an example of a deck you can play. You might not do very well with it, but you will bump into a Warrior on ladder if you play enough Hearthstone. It's not like the zeros across the board we had at the end of last meta. So the numbers are thin and the number of people playing them are high, and I think we're going to disagree as casters, as players, a lot about matchups until we see over this weekend how the top players play them.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also very interesting. I think that Sottle was bringing this up in that first series as well, about not only the difference in what people kind of think about matchups, but also in card choices. And I think we're going to see that in some of these lists throughout the whole weekend. But we're jumping into game number 1 here. Tansoku on this Druid, and Insane here bringing in this Hunter for the first game. Now, it's kind of interesting, as you mentioned, that the damage from this Hunter can kind of just appear out of nowhere. But some of these cards right now, I am not sure. Is Ricochet Shot going to be good enough here, dealing just 1? I think Insane's going to need to find something a little bit here to combat some of these treants that are going to start to come down from Tansoku.
There is that for now, but you can dig up the poison spines. I'm going to be terrible with the names of all the cards this time around. If he has them in the deck, I'm just having a look, and he does not, so he can't. There you go.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. The Ricochet Shot is going to do very little here.
And that Lingering Zombie is one that is a card that we're seeing one of those differences in as well. Some of the Druids that were brought have the Lingering Zombie, and I believe some of them don't. So that's yet another card, even though it may be not one of the most powerful cards. It's another card that players seem to kind of be disagreeing on, kind of which direction they want to bring this Druid in. Slightly more aggressive with more of these minions or not. But the Ricochet Shot can at least start to answer that. It is going to be a little bit awkward here, though, but there needs to be more treants, right? That's what these Druids, right, regardless of which version, are looking for, those treants. There is the Blossoms that is in hand, and now the Witchwood Apple has just been picked up. So there is a little bit of that generation there, and the Seedsman in hand as well for Tansoku, going to be able to ramp up a little bit more, get closer to that drum circle for either more treants or additional stats. And it's going to kind of depend which route that he wants to go with that on the current state of the board when he's able to play it.
Yeah, he's doing this first so that he lowers the chance of hitting face, which isn't a thing that happened straight away. And now has decisions to make on the second one.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate there going face first, but is it something he wants to risk with the second one?
I'm trying to find another option.
Yeah.
He probably wants to get this cat trick down this turn, so he's wondering whether to just Arcane Shot and suck it up or go for the second shot. Like, do you want the second shot later? Is the second shot actually going to be useful later? I think not. I think doing 2 now, 3 times, is probably the best you're going to get out of it. And then you get to dump the cat trick on the board, so you've got something on board for next turn as well. I like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to just clear these up as well, pretty handy. Now, I guess looking to potentially make a trade. You definitely do want to try to keep as much off the board against the Druid as possible, but is it necessary at this point, or...
Well, just set it up to do the thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
The Druid deck, I think one of the things that maybe put the top players off, and we've heard already from Sottle that PocketTrain was somebody who actually thought this was very close. I think something that might put the top players off is the skill ceiling is quite low. And yeah, the deck is super good, but there's not a lot of room for movability.
This is a really interesting turn here for Insane. Does he just want to go? Yeah, it was kind of a choice between do you just want to go for 1/4/4 body, or did you want to play the Farstrider and buff those up? But again, keeping Druid off of the board as much as possible can definitely go a long way, especially as you mentioned, kind of building up to some of that potential damage. But right now, there's really not a whole lot of damage in hand for Insane, and it might just be a delay as much as possible, get to that Prison of Yogg-Saron, and hope that you get something good.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else going on here, is there?
No.
The prison is incredibly variable, I've noticed. You often only get the first use out of it in these situations, especially against something like Druid. You're going to have 4 spells and a prayer. Not a lot else can happen here for him, I don't think.
Well, Tracker coming into hand can certainly draw into something. And Awakening Tremors going to be able to allow Insane to get on the board here, which, especially after just seeing Tansoku drop that Seedsman and not going wide with more bodies than just the single minion, this seems like a very good setup here for Insane. A lot of pressure.
Yep, this is a lot, but it's going to be a lot to get through as well, a lot of the time. That glowing drum circle there.
Yeah, it definitely is a lot of stats.
But no way of eclipsing it that I can see.
Yeah, not this turn. So is that something that's
take it?
Is it? Yeah. Is it just go for it here on turn 7, or is it stall and try to get even more value out of it?
Oh, you can see what he wants to do. Yeah. He just wants to take 1 million damage and not die, but common sense has prevailed, unfortunately, because I wanted to see him take that and see what happened. But yeah, it's big enough, isn't it? It's a lot of stuff.
It is. And I think with already seeing both ricochet shots used as well, these minions for Insane being at just 4 attack actually lines up pretty well, I think, for Tansoku, with the minions having 6 health on his side of the board. But yeah, here it is. One minion going down, 1 treant going down, in this Prison of Yogg-Saron coming out. We're going to see, is it going to benefit Insane, or is it going to be a punish?
This makes me laugh every time. Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
No, he was getting well excited there for a second, but yeah.
You can't get too excited too quickly with Yogg.
It's infinitized though for next turn. Is there a next turn? There's going to be a next turn, right? There's no buff in hand here for Tansoku that I can see. Oh, he's looking for one with the evidence.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely could search for it here. More potential for discovering into something. These are not the damage that he's looking for here. Yeah. Still several mana left after this ANR and Lifeblood coming out. Again, no additional damage.
Well, no additional damage, but also, whilst this hunter can do a lot of damage of burst, I don't think 26 is particularly in its wheelhouse. It's got to clear.
Yeah. Is there even a way to clear all of this from Insane right now? Really going to have to try to find something. There is the potential to draw. There is the potential to discover something else with that Infinitize. But is it enough?
Yeah, is there anything else? Is the other question. Like, he can pick away at some of the stuff on the board.
Yeah.
And draw cards, but are cards from his deck what he wants, or are random nonsense cards what he wants right now? The good removal's in his deck.
Yeah. Well, gonna start with the Conjured Arrow, clear something, and hope to draw into something else here. The other Conjured Arrow, this single target removal is just not doing enough to clear up all of this damage on the board from Tansoku, though.
Right. Oh, Sunwell time, everybody.
Well,
No.
nothing. Yeah, that was a very unfortunate situation for Insane, but on the other side of the board, that is exactly the kind of lineup, the kind of initial start to the game and lead into that big board in the mid game to close things out fairly quickly that Tansoku was absolutely looking for. I know Subtle said that he was maybe not a believer in the Druid as much as some other players. Obviously, Tansoku was there, but the draws also for Insane did not seem like they were going his way.
Yeah, I think that deck's going to be interesting all weekend to see. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it unfolds. I think Soto said he wasn't a believer, but I also believe, just in fairness to Soto, he's willing to defer to PocketTrain on such matters. If PocketTrain says it's really close, it's probably really close. But yeah, 1-0 in the books, and it did look pretty good there. And the Hunter, what do you make of this Hunter deck? It seems to me to be incredibly stable. It seems to be pretty good, but feels like there's just something slightly missing sometimes. That was one of those games where it just didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's a really interesting type of deck, I feel like, because there is that potential, but personally, I feel like you have to really have the decent draws along with it. And as we saw there, I mean, the draws just weren't lining up. Maybe it was just that matchup, but I feel like I'm a much more believer in the Hound Hunter style of Hunter rather than this kind of arcane secret Hunter. And I know that some of the players too, for like McBanterFace, he is not thrilled with his choice of bringing that arcane Hunter. So I am definitely very interested to see how it pans out. And here are some of the turns that we saw for Insane on that Hunter. The not really being able to buff up the arcane spells with those ricochets just didn't quite clear enough there from the board.
Yeah, and this, just for a start, this first couple of spells, start thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to get out of this. But no, he didn't get out of it. And still has that to go through. Such is the Conquest life. Tansoku's lineup, by the way, was basically, I mean, it's banned the Shaman, but if you look at the stats against the Shaman, I think he chose to just ban Shaman every round. I think he rated Shaman as good. All of his decks are terrible against Shaman. So that's allowed him some versatility against the field, but banning Shaman, is that where we want to be? That's another thing we have to find out over the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly interesting because also most of the players did bring Shaman. Not all of the players. I think 13 of the 16 have Shaman. So that's kind of one of those, are they trying to beat Shaman? Do they think that they have enough good matchups against the Shaman that they don't need to ban it? Or is it just a deck that they're going to say, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to ban that Shaman and try to win against everything else. As you mentioned, that's sometimes the nature of Conquest, and especially with having to have 4 decks for a lineup. I often feel like players are very comfortable with the first 2 or 3 decks, and then they kind of have to just fill in a 4th. So it could be kind of awkward for them to decide which deck they will ban in this situation. But we are going to be getting into game number 2 here, and there is that Warlock, Lorinda. Tansoku bringing in this Warlock, and Insane actually switching over. With Conquest, the player that loses can choose to switch decks, and it looks like Insane has decided to switch off of that Hunter and bring in the Mage.
Yeah, and he'll be pleased about that. And he'll be pleased about this draw as well, because it's pretty close to the nuts. You want to get on the board as this Mage. Sometimes you just don't. And the best way to get on the board is keyboard coin cold case, which he has 2 of cold cases. And that's going to represent a lot of stuff. On the other side, Tansoku with the slime, obviously in his hand, because that's what this deck does. It always has slime in its hand, and it always plays it, and it always gets the nuts. I'm not bitter.
I was going to say, that sounds like a lot of very personal experience there. Rinda. Maybe not from the player who's getting to play the slime. But yeah, as you mentioned, that keyboard into Cold Case, very, very solid. I mean, the big thing about this Rainbow Mage deck that a lot of players talk about is the amount of burst damage that's possible, but the Cosmic Keyboard also makes tempo sometimes potentially possible as well, especially when it is paired with Cold Case or follow-up bodies. Arcane Worm and some other small minions like that aren't necessarily the kind of tempo and the kind of bodies that you want to be pushing damage with, but they are there that can push a little bit of chip damage in the early parts of the game.
Yeah, it adds up. 1/3's remarkably annoying shape for a 1-drop, even in modern Hearthstone. You'd think that by now it'd sort of get out of that, but no, 1/3 is still annoying. But here we go. This is the thing that I always find difficult with this deck. When to deal with a slime, deal with the thing that comes out of the slime, deal the thing that comes out of the thing that comes out of the slime, or just ignore it and let them worry about it and hit them in the head. So you see him hovering there over the 7-drop, and that'll be his plan to get that down while still having some semblance of a Hearthstone game going on.
Yeah, there is always that debate, and it's always interesting to kind of see what players want to do because of the threat of things like Shallow Grave as well, right? It's not only just answering the slime in the first body, but if you don't answer the slime, is the Warlock player going to have the potential to create more bodies with Shallow Grave or even Reverberation the slime as well and create more bodies over the long term? And there's also really just no answer for it if he goes for it, for killing it. So I do like this decision here to just kind of draw some cards, try to go for his own game plan here. And yeah, he is just completely ignoring the slime, going to try to push that damage and say, even if you do kill the slime off, you get some big bodies out on the board, I can just close out the game over the top of any taunts.
Yeah, notice he didn't go for armor there. He could have played the Artificer, but he's gone for the Bolt. So next turn he has damage from hand, he has Bolt, he has AoE, he has minions on board. That adds up to easily 11, which is the target number. That's kind of your... If you can do 11 on board, you might not be dead yet. He has the Alibi to hold on for a turn or two. He has the Reverberations in his deck waiting to be drawn, which is the reason that Mage is favoured in this matchup. You just kill their big thing and then it's gone, and then they don't have a big thing anymore, and eventually the Warlock just runs out of ways to keep getting stuff back. But sometimes they just kill you, and I think that's why this Warlock deck is popular, because people like decks that sometimes just kill you.
Yeah, and especially if the Mage doesn't find an alibi as well, those big stats, those big bodies definitely can add up very, very quickly.
It's just what this deck does.
Yep, there it is.
I'm not bitter. This deck has never hurt me personally, I swear. It just does this every time. 100% of the time. That's why we showed it.
Yeah, it's definitely a deck that is kind of a debatable deck, whether it is something that you're able to pull these things off, or is it just not worth even bringing.
Right.
Most players, right? 14 of the 16 did not bring Warlock, and I think the consensus is that it's something that's not worth bringing. But
no, absolutely right, Dawn. Yeah,
it's paying off for Tansoku right now.
There's a few cards in the history of Hearthstone, and there's a few decks as well, that your own personal experience is so different from other people's at times. Mine, this is one of mine, but also for the other players. And some of the cards like the Yogg location, for example, like different people have had different experiences of that because the number of outcomes is so large. And I think that if you've had good experiences with this Warlock deck, you just don't want to put it down because the things it does are so powerful when it does them.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, too, there is that little bit of difference between the kind of like Western and European views of decks and the meta versus some of the like Asia-Pacific style of play as well, because both Tansoku and our other Japanese player both brought the same lineup. These were the two players that brought the Warlock. So there could just be a bit of a difference in the view there as well.
I think that's a good call. I think that traditionally, if Europe being the best region of the three competing this tournament, I think are easily the best region. Like, that's not personal preference. I'd like to support the Americas because I cast with TJ for a million years. But if Europe does have one weakness in its deck selections, I do think there's a little bit of snobbery around decks like this Warlock. Like, I wouldn't play that because look at it, it's a high roll deck. Not a lot. I think they're very, very objective, very mathematically based, and that sort of things. But if there is a thing, I think Europe sometimes just avoids stuff like this at source. We saw it with Token Druid 2 years ago as well. The Europeans weren't playing it. APAC were playing it a lot, and it did incredibly well when they brought it.
Yeah. Well, this is very interesting. I know yesterday in some of our prep, Lorinda, you and I were talking about this kind of difference between on-board damage versus in-hand damage, and we're really seeing that showcased in this match right now. Tansoku kind of has these decks, right, with this Druid, honestly, even the Mech Rogue that we potentially will be seeing, and the Warlock here that are very kind of focused on this on-board damage, building up these bodies, building up these big stats. And Insane, on the other hand, has more decks that are kind of focused on that from hand damage or building up a lot of that damage all in one turn. There is a decent amount of damage in hand now with this Sif kind of waiting, or the Norganon. I know Subtle and Raven were talking about the maybe discrepancy in if players want to bring Norganon or not. We do see it here for Insane. But is the damage in hand going to minions something that's going to be enough to clear this board and then close out the game in the long run?
That's what he's trying to set up. He's holding onto this alibi for dear life. Obviously, if you're not going to die, then you don't need to alibi, and he's doing the calculations over and over again. It can be really awkward. There's so many ways that the Warlock can do smallish amounts of damage, up to about 12, I'd normally argue. But, well, I would argue it's 7 million, but 12's more realistic. And he's going to hold on to his health gain, or his armor gain, and his alibis for dear life, and try and find that Sif, or try to cobble together a lethal somehow. He's going to need it soon.
Yeah, and this Forge of Wills coming down here, creating just even more stats on board. So many stats.
So many stats, yeah. It's a very large number of stats. 13-8 just appears for no particular reason.
I think it's also very interesting, the Inquisitor or Inquisitive in the Mage deck here can create some board clears, and there might be potential that Insane is actually just setting up for that, trying to play these different spell schools, use those to kind of clear off some of these stats. But the Warlock certainly makes it awkward, even if there is board clears, because of the death rattles and the kind of repetitive board states, that even if you clear these, well, there's going to be more right behind that, as you mentioned earlier with things like the slime, right? You have to answer the first part and the second part. And is there enough damage? Is there enough mana to do all of that here? And that Inquisitive creation does come down to close out, cleaning up that board there, cleaning up that second half. But also now at this point, Sargeras here going to be able to come down for Tansoku and just put out yet another board.
It is, but this is sort of the beginning of the end often for the Warlock if the Mage plays a tight game, where this stuff is annoying, this stuff can definitely kill you, yeah, it's very powerful, but the Mage now has a lot more control over what's going on. It knows what's going to happen to it. A lot of the surprises are starting to eke out, and getting through that part is often the turning point for the Mage. I would make Insane a decent favourite from this point on, although again, he still hasn't got actually any sort of semblance of lethal in hand.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that feels like the draws just haven't maybe lined up exactly for Insane yet again. There has been some good draws, but it's just not the pieces that he really wants. Sure, being able to play some of these spell schools has been great, but again, as you mentioned, now does he feel like he needs to play the defensive route right now to stop some of that damage with the solid alibi that he's been holding? Does he just go for this elemental inspiration, which we do see him choose to do? Unfortunately, on his side, no rush, so not going to be able to clean up any of that board. There is a single taunt, though, so going to slow down a little bit of the damage. But also on the other side, I'm looking at things in hand for Tansoku, like that Darkon, that could also threaten quite a bit of damage from the other side as well.
Yeah, one taunt and no rush, as you described there. Definitely not the outcome Insane was hoping for. But again, that's representing his own lethal now. He has to actually, this has to be dealt with. It's a lot of stuff. Because with any sort of chip damage in hand, he just wins the game. So Tansoku has got a lot of damage output available, but he's got to not die at the same time. And now things are getting tough for him.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting as well as we've looked through these deck lists. This elemental inspiration is also something that some players have in their mage lists and some don't. I've seen a lot of players even debating about one elemental inspiration or bringing two. And it can create a lot of pressure and a lot of board, as we saw. But if there is an answer for it on the other side, it feels like you kind of just spent a lot of mana to do nothing.
Yeah. Well, monster board once again. Inspiration, possibly slow. There is the backup plan of the alibi here. Yeah. And now Insane, with only 14 cards in deck, is into double alibi find Sif mode and a lot of weird boxes to open, starting with his planted evidence.
Well, this is an interesting choice here. The Volcanomancy and Fire Sail kind of do the same thing. The Pyroblast would have been damaged, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, I did the sharp intake of air, wondering if Insane could go sort of bolt you, alibi, then pyro next turn, but there's enough health gain in the other deck that's probably a terrifying thing to do. But just for a second, I was getting excitable. As I've been known to do.
The silence is interesting, but doesn't feel like it does enough. These removal pieces just don't feel like they are quite there. It's also kind of interesting as well, considering the fact that the board is full. So if Insane can kind of just set up the solid alibi, as you were talking about, kind of has saved it for this point, set it up now, and there's not really a lot that Tansoku can do in terms of trying to trade stuff off. I guess one of the 3/2s can go into the elemental on board. It's just going to be resummoned at the end of the turn if there is an empty space. But these kind of big bodies that we've talked about from the Warlock in general, they don't really do much against the solid alibi.
They do not. Although, yeah, they do enough to say that when you run out of alibis, we are going to kill you. But
right.
That's where we're at for now. Insane's plan now, though, his outs are the other alibi, a way to draw an alibi. And if he gets that, obviously the Sif available as well in some worlds. If he gets that, he does get to get the Metamorphosis and start pinging face as well.
Yeah, and there is no additional solid alibi in hand for Insane at the moment either. So this is definitely a lot of pressure, a lot of threat from Tansoku, and kind of putting Insane in a very similar spot to where he just was. You have to kind of choose between stopping my damage or going over the top and ending the game. And just in this draw, yeah, you can see Insane react to the draw there. Really not what he's looking for. He wants to be trying to find the damage to close out the game. Sif with these cheap spells right now would certainly do it, but that's not what happened.
Could hit the second alibi and enough damage to win and then draw the Sif because the deck's been thinned out. It's not a total disaster yet. It might just be about to become one, by the way, but right at this second, it's not a total disaster. He's wondering whether the 4 armor matters, and I think he's come to the conclusion it doesn't. Which I feel like I agree with.
Yeah, I think at this point the mana is much more important. Trying to manage how much mana He draws it. I mean, 8
He
cards
does.
left in deck. That Sif's still down there, but does find the alibi.
Oh, he terrifies me how often he ropes as well, by the way. So close every time.
He's a professional at this, and he'll
He
get
is.
there.
And has been for many years.
Absolutely.
All right.
Is there any way for Tansoku to try to... I'm stretching here. Try to heal up and somehow go above the health cap.
Right. Do we know how big the Sif is going to be? I know that the creation was doing 6 last time we saw, so probably 8's up there, which is the 22 needed. I wouldn't like to swear to that, but Insane has been collecting cards rather than playing them with the Holy and the Fell in hand.
Yeah. And Tansoku did try to give himself the most health possible there. Usually you want to see reverb on kind of key minions that you really can't answer any other way, or something that's going to help maybe your own win condition. I've seen players do that, like reverberations on their own Sif for even more damage or something to that effect. But there, I think Tansoku just had to kind of go for the reverberations to try to get a little bit of armor and hope that that was enough at this point to say, okay, I've seen both solid alibis. You still haven't killed me. And I'm just going to hope that this is enough at this point to threaten lethal on you next turn and you can't kill me.
What does double fire sale do here? There's a 6/6 reborn and play, right? So that's something. But it clears a lot. I'm just not sure if it clears enough.
Yeah. And if he takes the star power, I don't think that's enough either. And you can't play star power and the fire sale in hand together at this point either. I guess with the discount he could, but I still don't. I feel like the star power was a little bit too risky.
Well, just a 6/1 left. Wow.
Okay, if Tansoku goes for double summon and hits exactly the Darkon off of both, it's lethal.
Okay. Well, maybe that's his play.
I mean, maybe you start with one and see what you get, see what happens.
Might as well, yeah. If you get it, then you can just go for it.
Yeah.
He's just going to make another
Not
big
gonna
board.
go
I mean, he
for
knows
it.
Insane's
Yeah.
struggling like crazy to clear these boards, so one more time.
Yeah.
But that's his out stuff.
Still no Sif drawn for Insane either.
No, and this time it looks like the end, does it not? Unless I'm missing something immense from the elementals.
Yeah, Insane is trying to find a way out. I think just as we are here. I don't see it.
It's a load of taunts and 4/5 rushes, and I'm not sure how many of each it needs to be,
Yeah.
but it needs to be spectacular. Like at least 3 4
Yeah.
5 rushes. Oh, there's a ping, so 2 4 5 rushes, 1 4 5 taunt. That might be enough for now. It might not be too disastrous. mean, it's not good, but
I mean, I guess reverberations on the rusher to try to clear up a couple of things, and as you mentioned, the ping can clear up the
Okay.
reverberations, but there's no ping if he goes for inspiration. He didn't.
gets to use the meta again, though. That's how this works.
Right.
Nice. That was pretty cool. I'd missed that. Forgetting you could use the hero power twice, though. But
Yeah. That is it. So Tansoku actually getting a win with that Warlock deck. All of those early stats really paid off in the end, and I think one big part of that, on the other hand, too, was that Sif just not being found for Insane really was a detriment. I mean, Insane played to his outs every time, really tried to slow things down and kind of, keep the board under control, keep the damage that Tansoku was able to push to a minimum as much as possible, but in the end, it just wasn't quite enough.
yeah, and that leaves Tansoku with just the Rogue remaining now. His worst deck in the matchup, I feel personally, just because of what he's against. Insane with the Outcast that can go wide against it, the Mage that can reverberate a thing, and the Hunter, which is kind of a race, but the Hunter sometimes just makes 4-1 worms and gets there. So even though it's 2-0, it's not over by a long shot yet. But obviously, you always want to be the person who's 2-0 in front rather than the person who's 2-0 behind. And all of those matchups, while I'm saying that the Rogue isn't necessarily favoured, you've got 3 goes at it. You're going to get one most of the time.
Yeah, and it's very true. We also have seen, as we've been getting fed information kind of behind the scenes, there have been multiple matches across our group stages that have started at this 2-0 and have gone to a game 5. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility here for Insane. So definitely can still show up, but is there going to be a way to stop the potential big, huge bodies here from this mech rogue as we jump into game number 3? Tansoku, as you mentioned, on that rogue. Insane now actually switching over to this Demon Hunter, so getting a game in on all 3 of his decks, even though he hasn't won any games yet. But double Slither Spear in hand seems like a pretty decent start.
Yeah, interesting what he kept there. I was very interested to see how he was going to go with that, with the security, being good at taking off Divine Shield and just generally being annoying. With the Legendary ready to just win the game at a throw, but he wanted even cheaper stuff so that, we talked about it already. 1/3s that get bigger in this case are good, and the chicken is good because it makes more 1/1s and just goes wide. I'm curious to see how long Insane just trades things off the board and how much he actually just gets a massive board with double chicken here, maybe?
Yeah.
He's got a choice already to make a second minion or just to make a 2/5 and see if it sticks.
Yeah. I don't completely hate the coin Hawkstrider with the second Hawkstrider follow-up, but there, I guess, is that potential for some magnetic and it getting cleared.
Yeah, it's a little slow.
It is, yes.
Coin Hawkstrider is a little slow in this particular game.
It is. And that's what you're talking about, right? With the, is there enough to pay off there? Or can he just kind of hedge the bet, say, I'm just going to go for it, and I don't think that Tansoku is going to be able to clear this board up, but it is very slow, and it also means that there's no clearing of the mechs on the other side if he goes for it. He is.
This was a tough call. I think I would have gone the other way, so I'm really, really interested to see how this goes now. I think I'd have gone for more bodies, but worse, and it was obviously a tough call if a player of Insane's caliber, I mean, he's roped a lot of turns, but is roping it.
Yeah, and there
we go.
This is the punish, I think, here for that play, right? It's just being able to get that huge body cleared up, and now if Insane goes for the second Hawkstrider Rancher, just kind of putting himself in that same position. Can't really go for it with the big mech on the board. And for Tansoku now, that was a huge, pretty clear play, just being able to play the squirrel, magnetize, attack with it, get a coin, clear up the thing. I mean, one play, did a lot there for Tansoku.
Yeah, I wonder if Insane just took the view that he loses to that card anyway. Like, if your opponent goes clock, mistake, squirrel, it's over. Maybe he just said, okay, if they don't do that, my Hawk Strider's on the board, it's doing good things, it's going to put me in front. If they do that, well, I'm probably in trouble anyway. But he's got this now, and suddenly, with a flick of the switch, he's in a fantastic position, Insane.
Absolutely. I mean, we thought the high roll was going to be the Warlock deck, but how about high rolling some Outcast cards? I like that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is the Warlock deck, though, by the way. You're never going to convince me it's not the Warlock deck. This is my drum to beat the entire weekend. That Warlock deck, no. Not even once, kids. Okay, can Tansoku recover from this? He has a lot of card draw in hand, but currently drawing the right mechs, so why would he use the card draw?
Yeah, I mean, so many stats again on these bodies here. Now getting to play a gear shift. Only one card in hand, switching out the other gear shift for another 2 cards there, and gets to draw yet again. So another Coppertail Snoot, potentially to generate more. But I think at this point, it sounds a little bit odd, but to say going into 5 mana at the rate that he's gone, I don't know if he necessarily needs another coin at this point. Could just start with from the scrap heap, try to find something there. But the stats, again, the stats from the Coppertail Snoop are just fantastic.
And this, for me, is fun Hearthstone. Like, do you want to start trading, or are you just going to race him? And Insane's starting the engine, and he is off. He's gone, you know what? You're going to make a massive thing, as Tansoku's praying for Wind Fury, which kind of ends these sometimes.
Yeah.
I think he is, at least. But I'm just going to hit you. I'm going to make a massive whiteboard. You can never clear these up. And Tansoku's got to make a big Wind Fury thing, usually, to win this race from here. I mean, he could make a big thing that wins the race, but realistically, the Wind Fury would be the thing to end it.
Oh, I mean, Wind Fury in mechs, Wind Fury, if you can find it off of the Ignis weapon, Wind Fury just does a lot. That is for sure. And we did see the Innie Stormcoil in the deck earlier, but did not come into hand here. Krakatoa still a turn out. All right, going to go for that Coppertail Snoop here. Again, a lot of stats.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Look at it go.
Why not? Go ahead, give it stealth too.
So now Insane, the onus is on him to put a lot more damage on the board, because he's probably dead next turn, but if he's not, he has to win the turn after.
Right. Rush the stage is good as long as Insane's not dead the next turn, right?
Yeah. Tansoku is so expressionful. Expressive? There's a word for it. I know there is. I just don't know what the word is. Mind as well, this is a loser's match. The loser of this is out of the tournament at 0-2. Yeah, and the lifesteal.
Yeah.
We'll just seal that up, even though it's not lethal damage at the moment. Is the crab lethal? The crab's lethal anyway, right?
Yeah, and you can just see kind of the devastation on Insane's face there. This is absolutely not the position that he wanted to be in, but the celebration on the other side, there it is, the 3-0, Lorinda.
3-0 for Tansoku, looking good, and yeah, was very close to getting through his first match as well, so he'll be fairly confident going through to tomorrow. Insane, we're going to see this a lot. I'm going to say it this time, and hopefully not too many other times. The players have played 3 months of a ladder to get here. Insane crept in at the bottom. I think in the bottom place, it might have been one above that. I don't want to give him an injustice, but a lot of pressure on the final day for Insane to get into this tournament, and it's absolutely devastating knowing that someone of Insane's caliber will be going forward again, and 3 more months of that pressure. It does not stop for the people who don't win this tournament. And yeah, you're not just trying to win the tournament. I said it last time around. You're trying to win 3 months of your life at the same time. So yeah. We're going to see a lot of devastated players this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, unfortunately, that is just the name of the game sometimes, but it is always sad to see it, especially when, as you mentioned, it does feel like it took so much work for these players to get to this point, and then to just kind of see it end so quickly. Absolutely not what these players are hoping for. But it's only the second game of our first day here, so there is still a ton more that we have. I don't know how excited you are for these, but there's the replay here. Yeah, even though Insane was able to get on board, I don't know, there was just not much he could do there versus the gigantic mech.
Yeah, you asked how excited I am. I'm always excited for these tournaments. That is not an act. Sometimes I'm not excited to play on a given day of a given week, and that might give me a reputation of being a little bit sad about the game or whatever. I play 7 days a week. It's a lot of playing. But when these big tournaments come around with these big players, with metas we haven't seen played at high levels before, I'm always up for it. And yeah, this was not the most exciting match ever, but still we're seeing Tansoku bringing the Warlock deck, which, I'm memeing a bit. Hate it. But good to see him getting through there. Looks like the lineup's a good one. And again, he only lost 3-2 in the first match as well, so it's looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely very interesting of a series. I personally really liked the Mage versus Warlock game. I thought that was a pretty intense game, and it was really cool to kind of see that back and forth. So as we kind of saw, there was a bit more back and forth, I think, in that one than some of the other games that we certainly have seen. But it sounds like we are going to be jumping into another match.
Oh, excellent. I think it's going to be Rekvam and McBanterFace, if I heard correctly. And we're going to go into game 4 of that. I'll try and find out who is 2-1 up. So yeah, a little bit additional content, which is good. We want to see as many people as many times as we can today. And something that I know that everybody's worked hard on is getting to try and see all 16 players. It'll end up as 13 or 14 most likely. But they put a lot of time and they deserve to be shown. So hopefully we get to see a little bit of this match. See if we can find out what the score is for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does look like it is 2-1 in RecFam's favor there. And this is from our group D. I'm not
there we
sure.
go. It is another losers match. So BanterFace on the edge of another 0-2 elimination. One of, I'd say possibly the most prolific streamer now. Maybe Meaty takes that. I think BanterFace is the most regular of all of these top players. Incredible patience, incredible player to listen to talk about the game. And I mean, I'd like to say I'd love to see him go through and win it, but I don't want to root against Rekvam either, because he's another person who puts a lot of heart and soul into the game as well. So we'll just watch it and see what happens. That's the actual amazing thing we have going for us.
That's one of the tough things when we have these kind of smaller brackets of players, right? We have this high caliber, and it's difficult sometimes to decide who you want to root for. As a caster, I usually try to stay impartial, but if we do see McBanter go 0-2, I definitely will be a little bit bummed out for sure. I would absolutely love to see him at least try for that, winner's decider match in the bracket and not just go 0-2.
I don't claim to always be impartial, but I will tell you when I'm not, is my answer to that. It's, if you get somebody who I really like versus somebody I don't know too well, there's a good chance I will let you know that I'm rooting for one of the players. But I will cast it impartially to the best of my ability. But sometimes I can't help but have, a sneaky favourite. But this one, I don't want either of these to go out 0-2, and one of them's going to. There's times for memeing your favourite players. This isn't one of them. This is actually, as I just described a moment ago, a horrific time to go out of this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it does sound like we are actually going to go to a quick break, as that game looks like it actually is ending. So unfortunately we don't get to see that, but we did get to talk about it a little bit. And when we get back from a break, we will keep everyone up to date on our brackets and how these groups are facing down. So please don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Masters Tour Summer Championship. My name is TJ, and I'm joined by the one, the only Neil Lorinda Bond at Lorinda Games on Twitter. Don't forget to follow him. Lorinda, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. Always am on these tournaments, TJ. Oh, you got the flamingos on. I have to sort that out in a moment as well.
It's Flamingo Friday.
It's Flamingo
on Saturday.
Friday. But it's always Flamingo Friday, even if it's a Saturday. Day one, it's always Friday. These Fridays always get me energized. I absolutely love to see how these things pan out, especially in recent years where it's always a new-ish meta to work with. And, I mean, this meta is, 15 days old and still evolving. People haven't made perfect 30s for most of these yet, I don't think. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. Let's see if we have perfect 30s by the end of the weekend.
Well, if they have perfect 30s by the end of the weekend, then maybe for naught, because some of these decks are going to change next week. But I always like to see these kinds of metagames, right? We do have balance changes looming, but seeing sort of these players' masteries of the current metagame before it has the potential to switch is always really cool, because that it sort of tests their knowledge and their ability to play these decks in a vacuum. And I think that's a sign of a good Hearthstone player. But we're sort of moving along here with the tournament today. We kind of have matches going on all over the place. We're picking and choosing which ones we can jump into based on which ones are ready for us, basically for the time being. So for Group A, we do have the winners match for Group A. You saw there, Meaty versus WeQ. For Group B, Gyu versus Gamer RBG. Redmen got eliminated by Casey down there at the bottom. So maybe this is the tournament of the rise of the Americas, because I'm seeing a lot of America's names up there in these winners matches.
You can't just say that, TJ. We've been through this. You're not allowed to say it. I was looking at it going, no way TJ says it. Yeah, we go well, because I am American. Not many people know this, but I definitely am.
Yeah, we're going to ignore that specific group right there in the rise of the Americas storyline, with McBanterFace losing to Rekva, being eliminated from the tournament. But I'm feeling it. You know what, Neil? I've been casting Hearthstone for 9 years. That's right, 9 years. And you know what I've learned?
Firebat?
I said, just Firebat! Sorry, Firebat! World Champion! Is that I've never cursed anything by saying it out loud in 9 years of casting.
I'm sure you've cursed me a few times. Maybe under your breath. But...
On broadcast, I've never cursed you or cursed at you. Actually, I don't think I've cursed.
Is that true? That doesn't sound like a thing that's true, TJ.
Well, you can't remember either way. But speaking of the rise of the Americas, Neil, we got another match coming up. It's PocketTrain versus DreadEye. And this should be a good one. DreadEye obviously has a history in America's Hearthstone. But now that sort of the Grandmaster system has gone away, I feel like now we're sort of seeing the real DreadEye. We're starting to see his work pay off a little bit more, because throughout his seasons of Grandmasters, he had some very good seasons, some highlights. But it feels like the DreadEye of today is an even better player, and PocketTrain is insane.
Yeah,
an insane Hearthstone player. So this should be a good one.
We've done the frozen one, now we're doing the insane one. Yeah, PocketTrain all the way up there for the year's points, and WeQ up there with him, I think, but I haven't checked the numbers. We're going to take his word for it. He is very, very likely to get to the World Championships based on points over the years. That's what that means, not just the points of this season. And with that in mind, he's brought the Naga Mage.
Also
which
referred
is the
to
most PocketTrain of decks, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. And one of the slangs we use here at the Masters Tours for the Naga Mage is Outcast Demon Hunter. Just a little slang that we use for it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, this is a very high skill cap deck. PocketTrain is known over the years for playing these very high skill cap decks that require significant practice, significant game knowledge, and the ability to think and act quickly, because that's what the Naga Mage is all about. And I don't know if I'm happy that it made a comeback against good players. Playing against a good player on Naga Mage, sometimes it feels like you can't even do anything. Like you're just sitting there watching their turns. The full 90 seconds or whatever it is, and
Is
you
he
don't
younger
really
than Gaby
have
now?
anything.
I feel like he's
Sure
younger
looks
than
so.
Gaby now. I feel like
Sure
Gaby's
looks that way.
overtaken him in age.
Well, I've learned one thing over the course of the years is that when you're a young lad from the English countryside, you don't age.
Yeah, that's true. That I can confirm. Right, DreadEye, you
Just-
touched on DreadEye a little bit before we went into this, right, TJ? You said that he's developed a lot more since he was in GM, and I think that what's changed, in my opinion, is his breadth of knowledge. He's always been very good, but before I always felt that he was a little bit limited in his options, whereas now I feel that he can play anything.
Yeah, and I look back at his time in Grandmasters quite fondly because DreadEye was one of the players that week after week continued to try and break the metagame. He never sort of went with the grain; he always went against it, and that was what won him a lot of games is just lineup superiority. And I think you're right, sort of his breadth of knowledge of different decks and different matchups. He was able to get there on deck building and strategy. But now I feel like he's able to stand up in gameplay as well. And that's a scary thing. So there we go. Flamingo Friday! Neil's got it on!
Yep, found it. Just dug it up. Ali got me this for the event. She was like, why has everybody else got flamingos and you haven't? I was like, well, I don't have flamingos. She goes, well, here's a hat with flamingos on it. Wear it. Flamingo Friday.
Flamingo Friday. It'd probably be easier to get a shirt.
I
than it
mean,
would be to
I have a
find
hat, TJ. It has no buttons on it. I can't wear it as a shirt. It's...
Yeah.
I'm
suppose you're
sad
right.
at this. I've done my best, all right? I've tried to fit in, and you've just stopped it happening. I had a flamingo. Do you
This
remember
is-
I brought the inflatable flamingo in for you once as well? And you just...
Yeah.
I
So this is
don't know
now
why I can't get
two.
accepted into this clique. I don't get it.
This is now two separate attempts to fit in with the Flamingo crew. And honestly, when I got my Flamingo shirt, it was completely accidental. That's how common Flamingo shirts are, is you can just walk into a store, and when you leave, even if you didn't purchase a Flamingo shirt, if one was in the store, it will be with you on your person. And yet you've gone to great lengths to try and fit in by getting things that are harder to get, like an inflatable flamingo and a flamingo hat.
Mhm.
But alas, we've reached this point, Neil, and there's no turning back. PocketTrain versus DreadEye, game number 1.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see PocketTrain pilot this deck. We saw it earlier today. But this is PocketTrain. He's just good at these decks. He's just going to pretend it's Boar Priest and win. That's what he's going to do. On turn 2. Because he always went with Boar Priest on turn 2. I remember that clearly.
Yep.
DreadEye's
In
got
or
a
around turn 2.
In
DreadEye
the
does have
trade,
a hand.
We call this a hand, TJ.
Yeah. PocketTrain, also a hand. I feel
Yep.
if you have a siren, Nagamage has a hand. Like that's it. And it can always make stuff happen.
So,
Second Fast Wisdom finds Molten Rune and the Rewind. Now, the Molten Rune, I think, is just having a discount on the Molten Rune at all is fantastic because it doubles up on the Civ spell damage, allows you to find lethals sooner in the game. You probably hold on this objection, right? Just a cheap spell in hand.
Yeah.
There's no other cheap spells.
I had the pleasure of watching Sottle playtest this Naga deck. It was great. He just didn't draw the Siren for like 2,000 games in a row. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen, by the way. I recommend drawing your Siren if you want to win with this Naga deck. One thing it did show, though, like joking aside, I mean, it is what happened, but he still managed to survive incredible amounts of time with the deck, even with the bad draws. So it definitely has versatility when you do win. But you do have to eventually draw it.
Yeah, the thing about the Rainbow Mage, though, is if you let them have tempo in the early game and they get in that chip damage, it doesn't matter how powerful your pop-off turns are because that just makes their kill with Sif that much easier. Sometimes you don't even need Sif. Sometimes if you have enough minions stick on the board and you get all that chip damage in, just having a couple of arcane bolts and a Molten Rune on turn 8 is enough to finish the game. So, this is actually a tough decision. I think Blizzard can be quite good for when there's a Siren pop-off turn to block all the Nagas from being able to attack face the next turn. But already played a Frost spell, so doesn't really need that for the creation. It's a couple turns away. Oh, okay. Because it's the Infinitize the Maxitude, it's the discount, so can play it as early as next turn. If anything, just to stop a little bit of the board and get the keyboard minion summoned. A 5/5.
Yeah, it's underrated. Just getting the 2/2, just getting the pieces together. Hang on, he's going. Naga, spell. Your turn. DJ, let us down.
What?
You got to get into the beat of the Naga and the spell.
I learned a long time ago to just about it. Just let it happen.
I tried not worrying about it, and I ended up going Naga, concede. So I have to worry about it.
Well, I played Finley, so now it's spell. Nope, it's Naga. Naga spell. Naga spell.
You're right, you didn't worry
Finley's
about it.
Finley's not a Naga. Finley's a Murloc. Similar, but different.
Yeah. Finley has legs being the difference, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Nagas don't have legs, somebody was telling me.
That is a defining quality of a Naga, is no legs. A swooshy tail.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the Blizzard comes in, I feel. Or the creation. How many spell schools are there? It's been Frost.
You need to Blizzard? Frost. Haven't used a bolt. Is it just Frost?
Might just be Frost, actually.
Infinitize hasn't got a school. Yeah, it's just Frost.
I mean, it's
So
a
he's
5/5
considering
also.
just bumping off the 2/5 and the 4/1 and just taking it, isn't he? Like, he knows Pocket Train's hand is just a collection of cards from Finley.
Okay, so that's Arcane. So now we do have a... Yeah, I guess this is a better clear. I just wanted the 5/5. Nope, it's not going for the creation. Okay.
Yeah. Suddenly the board doesn't look menacing and he still has the Blizzard left for round 2.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, nice play into the objection there.
Yeah.
Oh, he also had, we didn't see the secret icon, but he was also worried about a potential counterspell if he had Blizzard.
Got it.
So that was probably the reason why he went for that play. Because if he just Blizzards and it's counterspell, what do? You left a Siren on the board with a full board.
Yeah. Good point.
You're gonna die. He could have killed the Siren with the minions on board, but then he would have left up everything else. So I think he wanted to play into that. And then after that turn, he knew that it was like explosive runes or objection, and so was able to just get the nice clear with the creation. So now we have
3, 4,
Yep.
5. Bam.
Okay, not too shabby. Also has a Mark of the Wild with a Wind Fury elemental on board, so if that's not dealt with, starting to look at a lot of damage. Arcane Bolt is now mana thirsted, can find some additional damage with Infinitize the Maxitude.
We saw Sottle earlier explaining the one signal that Gaby gave. Well, Pocket Train just gave that you've only got 1 in your deck for this elemental inspiration there. Because I just checked the deck list. DreadEye does only have the 1.
Yeah,
So
they can
he's
get
unimpressed.
quite bulky if you have the two of them. A lot of times, all you
Yeah.
need is one, and it's not like such a key card where you want to put in two just for the consistency of draw. You know, got to make cuts somewhere.
Or just play Renathar, and then you can play all the cards you want and just draw what you need anyway. Have you considered that?
Nope,
I have.
never played a Renfall deck in my life.
Yeah, good. Best way. Best way. That's why you're my friend, TJ. 5. That looks good.
Yep. Launch the Arcane Bolt, Infinitize the Max 2, perhaps.
Yeah, why not? I mean, why not? We've got a Bolt anymore, but... Oops. Now Bolt, for sure. That makes it easier, not harder. That's what we wanted, really. All along.
Yep.
We just didn't know it.
Ooh! Well... Okay, yeah, it's just burn. I was like, Sunwell is very fun, especially with a discount. Get a lot of spell
especially-
schools.
It is a lot of spell schools. Everyone tries to resist playing Sunwell, though. Rumour has it it's not actually that good, usually. Except when it is.
rumor has it. Who's spreading these dirty rumors?
You know what I mean? Just Hearthstone players, they spread rumours. They start off, they like something, and then next week you play it and they say they don't like it. Sort of like flamingo hats, you know?
Yeah.
You try and fit in, but you're always 1 week behind trying to catch up. Look at me playing my Sunwell. Ah, that was last week's card. You shouldn't be playing that now, you idiot. It's like,
That doesn't
what?
even make any sense because we've been catching up the whole time. We've never done anything different. Oh, this is a cool clear. Actually, it's not a clear.
Yeah.
At all. In fact,
And
it's
that's
the,
just it?
it's the same amount of power. I was like, oh, this is cool. Fancy play to get some damage off the board. No damage off the board. Start the turn with 8 power, ends the turn with 8 power. And that'll be DreadEye taking game number 1. Didn't actually need the sip there, but go with a little bit of style playing the sip off the top. So just not able to get the recurring pop-off turns from PocketTrain. First Siren was dealt with, like the way that DreadEye played around the secrets there, that we were slightly confused about because we couldn't see the secret icon. Played around Counterspell, and then played around Objection very well to sort of clean things up. So, nicely done.
Yeah, takes the 1-0, and PocketTrain, who I thought would be unstoppable on this deck, has so far been stopped at the signal or the junction. Or where do trains stop? The buffers?
The station.
Out here. He's at the station. Yet to pull out of the station. PocketTrain on this deck. We got there. Thanks, TJ.
Yep. Except your analogy changed halfway through because you were talking about where they stop, but the station is where they stop naturally. So
In the wild, like you watch David Attenborough. Here's the train naturally stopping at the station.
Yeah. So if a train naturally stopped at the station, it did its job. So the beginning of the analogy pretty poor, but you brought it home. You brought it home by by changing the analogy to it hasn't left the station yet, which, as we all know, part of a train's job after it stops at the station is to then fill up on passengers and proceed to leave the station. So if it doesn't leave the station yet,
unnaturally
in the middle of the tracks.
Just,
Actually, let's put it this way: anywhere but the station.
anywhere else is an unnatural train stoppage. Okay, so
Yes.
this one we're not sure about at the moment, but that felt like an unnatural train stoppage. So it wasn't at the station.
Yeah, PocketTrain left the station, got about 3/4 of the way to the next station, and then stopped.
Destination station.
Yep. So there we go. Settled on
Cool.
the analogy.
He's gonna. We finally worked out the analogy, and they still haven't finished the mulligan phase. Look at us getting quicker.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, TJ. We've come a long way.
Squirrel.
Oof.
Squirrel. Double squirrel.
Double one-syllable card. Into Clocker. Oh my goodness, this get good quick. But
Squirrel,
Pocket Train's hand can get good quick as well. Do you ever want a coin here? Shoot a thing, play a thing?
I want
Make a big thing?
I want to coin the coiler.
He didn't like that, whatever it was.
Light show.
Kill the thing! Yeah, kill it with your fiery mage spells and your fiery mage hero power.
Yep.
So my instinct here is always to play the stealth, so I'll be interested to see if DreadEye just goes a different way.
I think you do go a different way. I think the stealth is important post mech, right? Because what's the likelihood that you play a mech and PocketTrain deals with it on that turn? On turn 3.
True. Sure. 3 health.
Yeah,
Definitely can.
I suppose.
I just wanted to get a coin because my hand is so terrifying.
Yeah, this is tough. Because ideally, you'd play another mech, have a chance to attack with it, then stealth it, so you're guaranteed a mech on the following turn, right? So you're guaranteed mechs 2 turns from now. But it might be more important for DreadEye in this instance to guarantee a mech for this turn, just because of the fact that he does have the 2 snoops. But he's going to play the bigger squirrel, 4 health, hard to deal with, and this is sort of the ideal situation. Yeah!
Oh!
Nailed it.
Get light showed. Yeah, Pocket, look at him. He knows what he's done. The old 1 in 4. Something else about DreadEye, actually. I mean, he was always reasonably relaxed, but he looks so much more relaxed these days than he's on GM. Like he's enjoying the moment there, even though he's obviously hating it inside.
I feel like he's always been like that. He just has a genuine love for the game. And honestly, most of the players that are, still competing at a high level have that genuine love of the game.
True, actually.
Because there's
very fair.
Still a big prize pool for like world championship and stuff, but throughout the year, less tournaments. So you gotta have that love, that joy.
Bringing out the true DreadEye passion, the passion of all of them, in fact.
Yeah.
I like the left one, yeah. That's what I'd have taken too. Oh, prep, bone spike, everything. Do it. Just dump the things everywhere.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I think you magnetize first and see what you get.
Oh, I want to prep bone spike. It's so much fun.
It's much more difficult to recognize these when they're golden.
It is.
I don't play with golden cards. Yeah.
Now can we prep bone spike? Please, let me. I want to do it. Thanks. Ordering worked pretty well there.
Yep.
Yeah, PocketTrain's not enjoying this moment, strangely enough.
Coolant! Don't want to see a coolant. But this is a lethal setup. Not anymore.
Just cards.
Cards.
Watch the cards slinging around.
Oh, here we go. The reverb. Infinite mana.
Infinite mana, infinite Tom.
I'm not even seeing these spells.
I can't wait to try this on ladder. I'm going to have such a disaster. Look at it go. I feel like he's... If I'd played this many spells, it would have taken me 3 turns. Middle one.
Innervate? You don't need any more mana. Infinitize the Maxitude.
Just needs a freeze or something.
Or an Alibi. Oh, Vengeful Visage! Needs...
Oh my.
Oh, he doesn't have board space.
Ah, okay. Is it? It's not lethal. What's happened? And it's not a mech.
Well,
Not mech, and it's not lethal.
he's going to test for Counterspell. He's going to be very confused as to what this secret is, unless he rushes it to a minion first. Oh no. Not objection. He's going to be so confused. Okay, yeah, he's going to attack first.
Yeah. The face of someone who thinks they know what's happening and probably does.
Yeah, he's going to leave the Sirens up. Or not. I was thinking he's just going to take the most power off the board possible. He does have to...
PocketTrain has assumed the position of someone who's about to have another pop-off turn.
Yep. I have no idea how many spell schools have been cast. We have Arcane, Frost, Fire. Okay, that's it. Nature. Was that 5?
Frost, Arcane, Fire, Nature, that's 4, I think.
5 damage.
It's always more than you think, though. It's going to be more than 4.
6 damage,
6.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, perfect clear. Perfect mana utilization, perfect clear. Siren stays on the board. DreadEye's got a handful of coins. Draws a click clocker.
That's not good.
He's got 3 turns.
Good at all.
And Mimiron's gone. So it's like Krakatoa.
Yeah, or anything with stealth. But soon.
Yeah, but he has like 1 turn. I don't think he can afford to stealth. He can take this turn and survive, but he's going to die the next turn with nothing to defend himself, so.
Meanwhile, here's some Nagas. Can he find a way to get like an ice barrier or something? Here, it's the sort of card he wants, right?
Is that the forge something and get a copy of it card?
I want to say yes, but the elemental thing.
Yeah, I think
Fiery
it's like when you
elemental
forge.
man. Get a fiery spell, reduce the cost by some fire.
No, I'm pretty sure it's when you forge a card, get a copy of it.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
This is why I don't talk. This is why TJ knows the cards.
Mothership. You might as well just mothership into the 4/3.
Yeah, I mean, you've got no other play. You might as well find out what's... Yeah.
And then maybe there's no direct damage. Needs 3 damage. Give him another turn.
I wanted a Zola Finley there. Is that a Zola? That is a Zola, right?
He had no board space. Zola Finley can't play the Finley.
Good point. Yeah.
Oh! Oh! 1 damage off. Alright, we got a tied series. Both players taking wins with the mages. PocketTrain with the Naga Mage, DreadEye with the Rainbow Mage start things off. We got ourselves a series. Nelia.
We do. That was a game. Like, both of them showing the stress there at the end of it. It looked so like both of them had won early on in their own ways, and then petered out into a top deck war. And the Rogue doesn't top deck that well. Like you said, there's Krakatoa is definitely a way to win there, but yeah.
Well, you have like gear shifts sometimes that can get you out of some sticky situations.
But that's just top decking twice. That's still top decking.
That's still top decking. Yep. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I guess it allows you to draw something and stealth, but yeah. You just needed stealth on its own.
Yeah. Honestly, that game, I always hate like summing up games by like singular plays, but it was on the light show to kill the first squirrel. That would have been a huge snowball that I don't know if PocketTrain would have been able to get away from. But good on PocketTrain for picking that, just to, you know, not needing like target. You can get stealth minions damage with that. So many use cases, even on its first cast, right? Still lets you deal 4 damage to stuff, which is exactly what you need to do against Mech Rogue. It's just kill all the stuff, keep the board clean, or at least deal as much damage to the stuff as possible to give yourself the opportunity to kill it in future turns. So, looking towards these next matches, these next games, I'm curious to see how the Outcast Demon Hunter is going to perform across the tournament. Because Outcast Demon Hunter is this weird deck, right? Where, like, it's never on anybody's radar, and then you look at stats on HS Replay, and it's, like, always in the top 5 win rates in, like, Legend and top 1000 Legend. And I always ask the question, like, who's playing it? Like, every time I watch a stream, nobody's playing it, nobody's playing against it. Every time
you've seen 997 of the top 1,000 players by watching and playing streams of your own and everything, and none of them played a single game of it. So where's the other person? Who is this person who plays it?
And none of them's played a single game against it. And even in my own playing, like, I maybe have played against, like, one Outcast Demon Hunter. Who's playing with it? Who's winning with it? Who's upping this? And then who's convincing everybody to bring it to a giant Masters tour? Like,
yeah, like you check the stats, it's good. It is. It beats nearly everything on stats from the person who is playing it, but nobody knows who that is because nobody plays it.
Yep.
So are they really stats at all if nobody's playing it? But they are, because it's got a sample size that's relevant. Maybe the games are so quick that you don't notice them happen.
That's the age-old adage, right? If a tree falls in a forest, are there any Outcast Demon Hunter players to hear it?
Exactly.
Yes, there is,
TJ.
because that's where they are. They're in the forest.
In the forest. Playing Demon Hunter against trees.
Yeah. They're like scrimming against each other. Just playing Outcast Demon Hunter
playing against the trees, because they'll beat that druid.
Funnily enough, no Outcast Demon Hunter in this game. We got PocketTrain this time on the Mech Rogue, and DreadEye is going to be on the... I don't really like to call it Secret Hunter, but that's where we are.
Arcane?
Is this a moment where we have to count the cards in the deck, and whichever one if it's...
Yes. This is
whichever
that
one's more, if it has cards that say Secret on it, or more cards that say Arcane on it?
Yes. That's exactly how we're going to decide this. I like it.
Okay.
Also, you don't count Hidden Meaning as a secret. Hidden Meaning is like 2 mana, do nothing, right? That's how that works?
No, it's a secret. Alright, so how many cards say Secret on it? We have 1 Cat Trick, 2 Hidden Meanings,
3,
2 Titan Forge Traps,
5,
2 Starstrung Bows. That's 7.
7.
Arcane. Oh, there's way more Arcane. 1 Arcane Shot, 2 Ricochet Shots,
3,
2 Conjured Arrows,
5,
2 Silvermoon Farstriders,
7.
Haldoron,
Over. 8. Done. Game over.
Eversong Portal, 2 of them. That's 10.
10.
Star Power.
12.
That's 12.
So why is it called Secret Hunter then?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Urchin Spines and Arcane Shot looks like a good combo. I understand that combo. But you don't spend all your mana.
Play it around Hidden Meaning.
Your own hidden meaning.
Just making good habits.
Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever going to argue me about that card.
I don't know
Obviously,
if there was like another strong play, then I would consider holding on to Urchin Spine's Arcane Shot. But the alternative is just Hidden Meaning Pass. There's not even anything good to trade into on the board with this cat.
Yeah, what attack are you doing here?
I might even be
Nothing?
holding.
Yeah. Seems good.
And this is going to hint, because next turn is almost certainly going to be Hidden Meaning plus Hero Power, or unless there's something else drawn. So you need something to sort of buy yourself some time before Star Power, because Star Power is going to clear just about everything that the Mech Rogue's going to be able to do on 5. So
Okay. Start weaving.
yeah, and now I think you attack because you got Star Power.
Yeah. I agree. Star Power 15. If they can play around 15 on turn 4, even as Rogue, you know what? They can have the win. But DreadEye doesn't anyway.
Well, my logic was flawed because you could also use the fact that, hey, I have Star Power to incentivize not attacking, because then you Star Power clear the board, and then you get to attack on an empty board, and there's not a 2 in that can trade across. So.
I see. Okay. Sure, that actually makes sense.
Sometimes you're just wrong, Neil. Sometimes I'm wrong, and you just got to throw it out there. I was wrong.
I've never tried that. I'm wrong all the time, so it's not sometimes. So I'm just used to it at this point.
I had the right argument, but the wrong conclusion.
A bit like the station analogy. Had the right idea, but it went the wrong way.
Yeah, I went to a station, but it was the wrong one. And now...
Interesting decision now.
Yeah, I think you just trade in Halderon. And
Yeah,
weave.
I think so too. And weave. Are we ever killing them? I guess we are killing them by them not killing us.
Yeah, the Krakenbane's still got a while. It's still got 2 spells left. There's only 1 spell in hand. It's very expensive. I don't think just Starstrung Bow is worth much here, because PocketTrain's still at 28 life. You're not making that big of a dent.
If you bow, you have to hit the 2-1 maybe, which is horrible looking. Of course, you're not doing 6. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Come on, Neil.
No, that's why I'm saying it. Is like I think you might have to if you played it. So you just play something else instead.
Yeah. Like, Star Power is kind of interesting, but that's like your ace in the hole. Like, oh.
I'm just going to go face and just show what a lunatic I am. Oh.
He's keeping the 4-2 stealth!
Okay.
He's taking 1,000,000 damage!
Yeah,
even DreadEye laughed at that play.
Wow. I thought he was trying to save damage, not take more.
DreadEye got out of his train and then jumped in a helicopter and flew away.
That sounds like every movie ever. Oh my. Good luck with that Star Power now, kiddo.
It ain't a mech.
That's
though.
alright. We got links. The missing links, TJ.
Ah, but it would have been so good if he had just traded off the 4-2 and then developed Halderon last turn. Then he'd have 2 links for the price of 1. Would have been the same board.
And the missing links joke is funnier this way, though.
Is it though?
I think so, yeah. Because there's now a missing links. Because there would have been 2, now there's only 1.
Fair. Yeah. It is about 20% funnier.
I think
But
it's
20% of 0 is 0.
Thanks, Tej.
That was funnier.
I used to like you, TJ. You used to have my back. It was funnier. Go on then. There it goes. It finally attacks. Doing the thing it could have done several times before.
PocketTrain's still at a crisp 28, though.
Yeah, there's some legs in this one yet. Or wheels, I guess. For a train.
And this is like the perfect amount of mana utilization here. Going to be able to end on a gear. Nope. Okay. Just kidding. Because he doesn't want the hidden meaning to come out.
Yeah.
Weaving!
26.
And Krakenbane number 1 is active, I believe.
Yes. Playing cards. Is he going to wait till next turn and play a lot of cards? Is that what he's thinking here? No. Okay, good. Well, kinda. 11. It's just going so slowly, but it is going.
Yeah. DreadEye needs draw. Needs to find the conjured arrow.
Yeah, needs something. Alright, let's see how ridiculous this is. Usually the answer is pretty ridiculous.
Oh, Stomper, but you can't Stomper here because then you get to give the hidden meaning, and you're not killing anything on the board. The hidden meaning is 4 attack. Okay. Oh, double blades.
Right? Alright. They're doing such small amounts of damage each turn, but they are slowly ticking down. This is like some old school grind fest. That's a lot of damage. It doesn't
Oof.
really help.
Yeah. I mean, there's no other choice.
Yeah. Lethal next turn if you get a next turn. Spoilers.
Just smack and weave. Smack and weave. Smack and weave. There you have it. DreadEye gonna concede. I feel like his game plan was not terrible, but there was a couple plays that I disagreed with. It's entirely possible that he was on the right track, because I think that he maybe loses that game regardless. But the big one was the bow hit into the 4/3 to keep his cat stealthed. Took a lot of extra damage for that, and the 4/2 just ended up trading off anyway. And the alternative play for that would have given him an extra links. Obviously, that's results oriented. So
those ones are always interesting, right? Because you called it at the time, and when we watched it play out, it played out badly for him for sure.
Yeah.
But his draws weren't conducive to sort of clearing a board, making a board, hitting your opponent with a 4/2. If he'd drawn differently, and he did draw just minion after minion in his spelly deck, suddenly he has a board with a 4/2 on it and does a lot of damage to face, and he looks like a genius. Yeah. And this is one of those games where it's really hard to call based on all the possibilities, whether he did it right or not. But the way it panned out, it definitely looked a little bit clunky and awkward.
Yeah. It's very difficult when you draw that many minions, like both Krakenbanes with very limited spells. No Masked Singer, like no way to thin the deck. Didn't hit Contradero even after the Haldoran to be able to draw through the deck more. Just kind of rough draws. No play on any turn felt great, right? I don't think there was a single turn where DreadEye could sit back in his chair and be like, "That was a solid turn."
Yeah, like play weapon, hit a 4/3 with it, leave my 4/2 stealth. Like, and it was. We didn't talk about that play. I talked about hitting the 2/1 if you play the weapon. We talked about not and just going face and just doing a load of damage. There was just so much to choose from.
Yeah,
it was such a weird turn. I'm not saying he did it wrong either. It was just such an awkward, clunky mess of a thing to have to do.
Yeah. PocketTrain is a Zapper Flow Rider connoisseur. I've watched a lot of different top-level players stream this list, and when offered Zapper Flow Rider, some players opt to go right for it, and some players don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Really?
But I feel... Yeah. But I feel like a lot of times the name of the game for this deck is tempo. This is like tempo. Because you fall behind, you end up having to like try and do your combo when you don't have guaranteed. Just having minions on board is such a big deal.
I'm a big fan of playing it. I do, having spoken to Sottle a lot, who obviously invented Shaman, the entire class, with Ego Shaman, as I'm going to call it, because it's Sottle's ego on the line. In fairness, he put a lot of work into it, but not overloading and using your 3-drops efficiently is something I'm doing more and more and more. That when I first started playing the deck, I was just happy to keep Ancestral, draw cards on turn 2, and Sottle's like, nah, don't do it that way. And since I started trying to play cards on turn 3 a lot more regularly, the deck's worked a lot better for me. And Sottle knows all about this deck, so we can't argue with him this week on that one deck. You talked about the tempo, TJ. Here's the tempo turn. Or setting up the tempo turn.
This is a lot of damage, though. Holy moly.
Uh-huh.
Oh, is that Altered Chord? Oh, man. Oh, yeah.
It's what I was talking about earlier with this Hunter deck. Like, what's done the damage here? Your opponent's on 15. You haven't played a Hearthstone card yet. You just got stuff. Just cobbled together 15 damage in 4 turns. Wait till the good stuff comes out in a minute. Oh.
Yeah. It's going to crash first. That way you can coin Altered Chord into the now 2/2. Doesn't have to put the Altered Chord into a Vine Shield, so actually gets the health from it. So, love it. Love it.
This turn was available because Pocket took last turn out to play the Flash to make this turn, super powered.
Yep.
Something that I know I don't do enough. Even though I know I should be doing it more, I still can't find the spots to do it, and Pocket just ripped it on turn 3 into that turn there.
Yep. There's only one overload, I believe, so PocketTrain. Okay. Just schooling for Allspurs. That was my initial instinct, but then I was like, can you just go schooling, play the 3 Piranhas? But that would get pretty ruined by a ricochet shot. Goes for card draw on the Titan first. Needs to try and get through this deck. Doesn't have a Contradero in hand, so not the best hand for finishing out this game. Ooh, the Thorn. It's just the 1 overload. So going to be able to draw.
Yeah, Pocket's in a good spot with that health game, right? He's just dominating the board now.
Yep. And
what's the most Hunter can realistically do from hand? Sort of 13 is the number I've heard floated around. Yeah, as a rule of thumb, not an exact.
Oh, it changes so much. Yeah. Depending on how many like arcane buffs you actually have in hand, if Haldoran's been played, how many minions are on the board too, right? For ricochet shot, factors into the percentages.
It's a noticeable number, though, isn't it? It's higher than you first think.
Yeah. But this turn's going to be all about getting these Krakens online. So I think we're going to go Cat Trick. Hero Power.
How about 3 dudes and hope they don't have it? Yeah.
Or Singer. Because if you go Singer Hero Power...
Oh, yeah, it's 15.
You have 15 from hand.
Yeah. He's been cracking on with it.
Yeah. So needs a... PocketTrain would need a Taunt Totem here, or a Titan.
Yeah. And he got the Titan.
I think
he
you
doesn't
just go,
know what's coming.
I think you go Titan Flash, and then try and get there next turn. Unless he doesn't think he can die?
He probably doesn't think he can realistically die. This is what I was asking the question a minute ago about. So what do you pitch the number at as? What do you expect your opponent to have from hand, you know?
Oh, the cat trick, though. Oh, yeah. Okay, now you definitely don't draw. Now you definitely deal and heal.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
DreadEye! Look at his face! The camera can't sit still. DreadEye can't sit still. I can't sit still. Ouch.
So he had so DreadEye had 7 showing. PocketTrain was at 15. So 8. He's saying you can't deal 8 damage to me. He knew that 3 cards in the hand were the what are those things called? The Jormungers?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. He knew 3 cards were Jormungers. He knew that
Did
3
you know
of
one
that
was a
damn
secret?
He knew one was a secret. Yep, he knew one was hidden meaning. So, and he knew that if one was Starshrunk Bow, it would cut down the amount of power that he already had on the board, right? Because he had a 3 attack weapon. So Starshrunk Bow was only like 3 additional damage showing if that was one of the cards in his hand. Did not expect the double Kraken Bane. Yeah, that was a huge risk that he took and did not pay off.
But those are the calculations that some players make, like PocketTrain, and they pay off so often that they stick with their instincts a lot of the time.
Yeah,
you can kind of see how he got there when we went backwards there. When we see we've eliminated so many cards in hand actually doing something, and Pocket's play. The thing is, what did he gain from doing the play?
He had a better chance to counter lethal. If his Titan was dealt with and he didn't get the overdraws.
If the Titan's dealt with, okay, yeah.
Because that was his second flash, so he was hoping to, find so would have had the discounts the next turn. Was hoping to find like the lightning bolts.
So he could beat Urchin Spines and all that stuff that way.
Yeah, or like links, right? Double links or something like that. Mm-hmm. His Titan being cleared. He was worried that, let's say, he goes for the healing and the damage, and then his Titan gets cleared, like with a star power, for instance. Or double links, what have you, or Urchin Spines, then he doesn't have the card draw necessary to win. Didn't have the flash, even though if the game goes on longer and you heal up, sometimes you don't even need the flash to win the game. Didn't have like bio either, so like the next turn would have been like kind of missing a good chunk of damage. I feel.
Yeah.
So did take the risk and didn't go for it, but we could see that DreadEye didn't really have a way to deal with the Titan, unless he started throwing damage into.
Yeah, as it happens, he's going to start putting that damage into the Titan, and then the Titan's drawn the cards already, and Pocket's ready to go. DreadEye's got to think, yeah.
So
curious to see how they play this, because all I do in this matchup is try and find way. Even if I don't, I cry in a little hex and cry in a little ball in the corner. I want to see how good players do this.
I think that's the way. I don't think there's another magical way that you can do it, unless you have like the ultimate start and you just kill them on like 5 or 6. You just draw like everything. You double flash on 4, and then
yeah. He's gonna have the fish option here, especially rolling that 1/1. at some point.
Yeah, that's a good totem to start things off.
So many choices here, weirdly. Part of me wants to dagger this 1-1 down. I just preserve my shield.
Yeah.
I know that there's a schooling, but...
Yeah. Because, like, this play here gives PocketTrain an excuse to triple fish, right?
Yeah.
If you just dagger it down, like, PocketTrain can triple fish, but he's throwing 2 fish into the click locker, and then you still have the magnetized buffs for afterwards. But maybe he just wants to get the fish out of hand. Like, again, the right logic, wrong conclusion. Maybe that's DreadEye's goal, is to make sure that PocketTrain plays the fish.
Just, yeah, 3 cards from hand and you pass and not drawn any cards. You haven't played a Fetal Spirit. It's okay. Maybe.
Okay. There's the flash of lightning.
It's getting close already. Do that thing, DreadEye. Do that thing that you do with the rogue. Do the thing.
What thing?
The thing where they have a 1919 minion on turn 4 or something. Or 2 1919 minions on turn 5, which you don't do anymore. But, you know. Just do the rogue things.
So kind of no matter what deck Rogue is playing, it's like, nah, just doing Rogue things.
That's actually really, really true. It's just Rogue gonna Rogue. So what are we stealthing? I think that's the main question here. And are we mothershipping on 5?
I think you... Yeah, I want a mothership on 5, so I think you just play the spider and then the oscillator afterwards. I mean, just leave the 3/4 stealths, that way you can play into mothership next turn. And as far as this attack goes, it's probably got to go into the piranha, right?
I think
in
so.
Case there's another schooling on the other side.
A second lot of fish would start to become painful for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Nope.
Have we called a single DreadEye play correctly? I don't think we have.
I don't think I've called
ever.
I don't think I've called a single DreadEye play correctly in his entire professional career.
Yeah. Sometimes even after he's done it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's scary, isn't it? When your opponent gets schooling that can do real big damage to your board, and they just choose not to because you've got silly 4/4. Just keep giving it 3 attack for a reason, obviously. Because the 4/4 is terrifying.
Yeah. But I feel like this is a pretty reasonable position for PocketTrain once he sees the turn here. So he just has the 1 oscillator discount. So it looks
Explain
like
to me,
it's just
TJ, about colours of spark bots.
What about it?
People in my chat were complaining they were the wrong colours before they got changed. How can a colour be wrong?
I mean, they're based off of the color of like the keyword, right?
They're all the same. They're all in white. The keywords.
No, the lifesteal symbol on cards and weapons is pink.
Another one.
The poisonous symbol on cards and weapons is green. The taunt symbol doesn't exist anywhere. There's no symbol for it. But if it did exist, it'd be red.
Where do I find these people?
Divine Shield is very paladin-y, so yellow.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm getting them wrong, actually. The taunt one's not red, is it?
Because I'm just agreeing with you mindlessly at this point because I don't understand the discussion. So I'm just
because I was like, wait, what color is Rush? And then I was like, is Rush red?
I think Rush is red because it's angry.
Okay.
It's like, rah, I'm red because red represents angry face.
Then what color is the taunt?
I don't know. None of these things are real.
Now you're confusing me.
Good. It's confused me for days. I'm glad somebody else is confused. Also, isn't Paladin normally pink? I got told off for listing paladins in yellow when I used to do the stats. Somebody said that they're supposed to be pink, which has always confused me as well. Sottle's trying to talk about this random mecha shark that's been made, but I want to talk about the colours of Spark bots, honestly.
Yeah, Mecha Shark's pretty good. Okay, red is Rush. I was wrong. What color is Taunt? I'm out of colors. Is it orange? Is that orange?
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, they've been changed to something else from what they were. So whatever they were, they're not. They're arbitrarily different, as this Mecha Shark is doing hundreds of damage.
Wait, is this
points.
lethal?
It's got to be close.
Has he got
It's
the
got to be
coolant?
really, really close.
In the horn? No, the horn doesn't do anything.
Pocket
Thought the
Train's
horn
not
was the
enjoying
blade
this
for a
turn of
second.
Hearthstone. My God. Was there a lethal there with the switches somewhere?
No. He would have had to got if he got the switches earlier. No, because the Mecha Shark had already had the highest attack, right? And that was the one thing that could still attack.
It was the
by
only
end.
thing that could attack. Okay.
All right, now we're looking for counter lethal here, or at least a board clear. Lightning Reflexes did pick up the lightning bolt, right? So still an extra nature spell in here somewhere. It's very unlikely that it's going to be lethal. Yeah. But the
So someone's
crash.
saying the leftmost minion could have attacked if they managed to get the switch down there, but I'm not certain.
Okay. But would it have been enough? Oh yeah, it would have.
Yeah, because
Instead of the
you
stealth,
switch it with
right?
the shark, right? It's just huge.
Yeah, instead of the +3 attack Mimiron thing.
Yeah.
You use the switch on the 1/2. All right.
Because the shark's basically giving the shark wind fury when you use the switch, isn't it? So
Yeah, and now PocketTrain is hoping there's no blades. There's not. So gonna gear shift.
Here we here again. Why is Rogue trying to do 3 damage for like the second game? But I like to exaggerate, because 3 is a bigger number. Well,
Is not dead.
what is this with 2 players just ironing each other out?
There's +1 spell damage on the board. So it's what, a lightning bolt? Ends it?
Flash and Feral, so defenders.
Yeah.
If
That's enough. Because you Feral Spirits, Lightning Storm, or Turn the Tides, Lightning Storm, Crash, and then you get the attack to face with the face plus the fish. Yep, there it is. Exact, right?
woohoo,
The one
What a
damage from the
game.
fish coming in.
and DreadEye just couldn't get 2 or 3 damage twice with the Rogue. I think it was 3 one time and technically 2 the other, but basically 3 he was looking for until the end.
Well, also
With the
Miss
Rogue.
Lethal at the end. So if
And Mr.
that
Lethal.
1/2 could in fact have attack, it would have been. It would have brought it up to. What was it at the end? Was it 10? Was it a 10 attack shark?
11, I think, but you'd have missed 3, so it would have been 8 instead of 1.
Okay,
So
so
you
yeah, it
put
would
the
have been
+3 on it instead of putting the wind fury, the switch on it.
7 additional damage. Okay,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just DreadEye having to fly by the seat of his pants, make it up as he goes. Quick recognition of the parts that were being put in the hand. What are they called? They're Mimorons. They're not parts. They're not tools. They're called some gadgets.
Utilities, gadgets. They're always something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look. I'm going to keep guessing words. Guessing words is far more fun than knowing words. I've done it all my life.
And then beyond that, even if he did the exact same play that he had, there was also multiple chances for him to get just 1 blades for the 3 damage. So it was a mixture. It was a a mixture of making the error at the very last second and also just not being able to find the follow-up. But PocketTrain, fantastic recognition of the situation. Even just playing the 3/4 in between all of the nature spells, right? Calculating, okay, I'm going to make up this discount. And I don't know with the Turn the Tides draw if he hadn't played that, if he would have had enough mana. No, he would have. But regardless, still very nice lethal spot there at the end, calculating it for exact lethal. And PocketTrain's going to move on. Now, that was not an elimination match, if I'm correct. That was a winner's match.
Group winners match. So the PocketTrain is through to tomorrow, and DreadEye gets to play the elimination decider match later on. So.
Yep, the decider match, which is a very stressful situation to be in because you got to wait all the way till the end of the day, and then you win, you're in; you lose, you go home. So should be a good one though. DreadEye seems to have the good decks, and I'm excited to see him play later because this is the rise of the Americas. That's what the expansion should be called. But Neil and I are done for now. I believe Neil and I will be on the last match of the day. So for the three of you that are huge fans, make sure you stick around and tune into that one. But before we jump into our next match of the day, we are going to have to go to a quick break. So don't go anywhere. Plenty more action here from the Masters Tour Summer Championship right after this.